Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has god-level power in Harry Potter. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by I Like Fear 1 to 2 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. And so it begins. Ruins, that's all he could see around him as he glided elegantly through what was once the greatest hidden village in the world. It's a pity so much magical blood had to be wasted. The man thought as he sidestepped another dead body. Most people ignored the man or simply didn't notice him as he made his way towards his destination. The man couldn't help but admire the destruction around him, the power of the Nine Tails was truly astounding. It bothered him that so much magical blood was spilled, but he knew that if this village wasn't taken down, all of his plans for the future would be destroyed. Ever since that blasted Minato Namikaze entered into his war, he and his Death Eaters hadn't won a single major battle. Minato didn't need to send his armies, as he could just go to the battlefield in an instant, no matter where he was previously. After he gave his special kunai to those damnable Order of the Phoenix members, his Death Eaters began being slaughtered. Lord Voldemort was a smart man. He knew he couldn't take Minato in a one-on-one fight, that man was just too powerful and much too fast for the Dark Lord to contend with. So, he had to go with his partner's plan. A tenuous partnership at best, but still, the masked man did have great ideas and the devastation around him was a testament to how well the plan had worked. The two had prepared just in case the fox had been sealed and the village survived to infiltrate and kill the new host while the fourth was weakened, thus ending the village for sure. Sadly, it seems his partner was not in decent health after the first attack, so Lord Voldemort was left to finish Plan B on his own. Voldemort elegantly strode into the busy hospital. He had placed a powerful Notice Me Not charm on himself, which let him easily outmaneuver and pass by the many shinobi and civilians present in the building. Eventually, he made it to the room where he knew the Jinchuriki were. He opened the door and stepped in. Two Anbu Black Ops fell from the ceiling in front of him, swords drawn, their eyes were on the door, but with the Notice Me Not charm still active, he appeared invisible to them. The Dark Lord let out only the lightest of chuckles before he wordlessly sent two curses right at the Anbu, and given how close he was, they were unable to dodge. Both curses stuck true, right in the Anbu's chests. Both men wailed in agony as they began to dissolve. Their armor and skin melted off, and soon their organs began to fall out of their bodies. With all the cries of pain echoing out all throughout the busy hospital, no one could hear the two warriors die in agonizing pain. The Dark Lord strode past the pools of flesh that used to be the two ninja and made his way over to a nursery on the far side of the room. Two children awaited there. One was crying loudly, obviously startled from the deaths of the Anbu, while the other just stared at him. Voldemort looked between the two children, it saddened him that innocent magical blood such as this had to die just to kill one man. If that nuisance Lily hadn't managed to convince her husband to get involved in the war in Britain, he would have no reason to be here and these two innocent children wouldn't have had to die. Sadly, however, he was here and now he had to kill them. He gave both children a once-over. The crying child was blonde of hair and had deep blue eyes just like Minato, she wailed loudly, and if it wasn't for the sizable power she was giving off, coupled with the slight trembling of the room from all the magic flowing off of her, he would have killed her immediately, just to put an end to this. Yes, Lord Voldemort was a man of charisma and elegance, and he didn't enjoy hurting children, especially magical ones, but this was Minato's child, for her, he would make the exception, even if he wouldn't enjoy it. He glanced over at the other child and was surprised to see her staring up at him. Only a day old and yet the look in the infant's eyes was intense. Voldemort sensed power in her eyes, they were a very dark blue, almost black if the light wasn't good. Her hair was a deep red, nearly black as well. If it wasn't for her facial features, he would think that this child wasn't really Minato's. Obviously, she took more after Lily, but still. Voldemort stared into the child's eyes and was surprised to see understanding in them. She looked like she knew why he was there. This caught Voldemort off guard, but he quickly recovered, dismissing the thought as absurd. Still, he knew this would be something that would bother him for quite some time. This infant had an unnatural awareness to her, she seemed so aware and content. It was surreal. Voldemort raised his wand and aimed it at her. He stared at her for a moment more, feeling a pang of sadness echo through him as he muttered the words Avada Kedavra. He watched as the eerie green light shot from the end of his wand at the child, he saw the light impact her stomach and he watched her flinch. But instead of going still, her eyes shot at him and in his last moment, Voldemort saw something that no one had seen in thousands of years. He watched in slow motion, the green light of his spell, still hovering in the air, as the child's eyes changed. Her pupils became tiny and her iris turned white and then to his awe, her whole eyes turned a lavender color and black rings appeared. In the half-second that it took for this to happen, Voldemort became the first person in generations to lay eyes on the legendary Rinnegan. Suddenly, he saw the green killing curse begin to contort, the energy coalescing against what looked like some kind of shield or barrier that had appeared around her body. He watched her crib warp and shatter, and he watched as the barrier expanded and the energy of his killing curse came hurtling back at him. And as the Shinra Tensei infused killing curse slammed into him, the Dark Lord had but one thought, as his whole body was vaporized, as his mind and soul became a wraith, that thought was one unfitting a man of his station, a Dark Lord, head of an ancient and noble house, but it still happened. That thought was bloody hell. As Voldemort's wraith hovered in the air for a second, it glanced around the now ruined room. It spotted the blonde child lying on the floor covered in blood-red chakra that seemed to shield her from death. She had some splinters embedded in her skin, but they were quickly pushed out by the demonic energy and healed almost perfectly. For some reason, the demonic energy caused a mutation to occur, along her cheeks, 3 whisker-like marks appeared. The other child, the one who had just killed him, was lying on the floor directly before him, her eyes returned to their normal state and she looked calm. Though the craziest thing by far for Voldemort was when the child looked his wraith directly in the eyes. Voldemort knew that to stay was to risk true death, so with a swift motion, his wraith flew out one of the now open walls. A few minutes later. What the hell happened here? Minato shouted as he walked into the room on crutches. He was exhausted from sealing the 9 tails, and he was still suffering from the injuries he incurred from fighting the masked man. I'm not sure, my lord. The room just exploded. We rushed in here and found the 2 children unharmed, but their Anbu guards have been turned into slag. One of the Anbu informed him. Where are my babies? Lily Namikaze's voice could be heard as she entered the room. Here, my lady. A dog-masked Anbu replied, he was carrying both children in his arms. Oh, thank God. Lily sighed as she stepped up and took both her children. What the hell caused this? Minato asked himself aloud. Perhaps an investigation is in order so that we may garner some information. A voice spoke from the doorway. Minato glanced over and spotted an old friend. Headmaster. Lily greeted with a smile, getting one in return from Dumbledore. Dumbledore-sensei, Minato said with a little happiness crawling into his voice. Minato, my boy, it's been too long. I heard of the 9 Tails rampage. I and the other members of the order came as quickly as we could. Though it seems the danger has passed already. Dumbledore replied as he stepped into the room. Yes, the fox has been sealed. But it seems something is still going on. Minato replied as he glanced around again. I wonder if this has anything to do with Severus's mark fading. Dumbledore remarked aloud. Snape's mark faded? Minato asked curiously. Yes, not more than a few minutes ago, his mark began to burn and then faded, he sent me a Patronus with the news. Dumbledore replied as he pulled out his wand and made a few motions in the room. To his amazement, when his wand passed over the ashes that sat in the center of the room, the dark mark appeared over them. My goodness, Dumbledore's eyes widened in awe as he looked at the mark. That's Voldemort? Lily asked, recognizing the mark and the spell Dumbledore used to identify who used magic in the room. How is this possible? Minato asked as he too realized what was going on. Somehow one of the children must have done it. Dumbledore stated. That's impossible, these children are a day old, there's no way they killed a wizard as strong as Voldemort. Lily replied as she glanced at the 2 bundles in her arms. Allow me to check. Dumbledore stated as he stepped over to Lily. She allowed him to wave his wand over the 2 children, and to his surprise, the youngest, Naruto, began to glow red. They also took notice of how she now sported whisker marks on her cheeks. It only took them a moment to make the connection between the marks and what had happened. The fox. Minato stated as he looked at his youngest. Its power must have somehow deflected Voldemort's attack. I think you are right. Dumbledore said as he eyed the child with shock. She killed Voldemort. One of the Anbu stated in shock. She's a hero. Another said as the news of the Dark Lord's death began to spread through the ranks. Not only is she a hero for the village, but now all of Wizarding Britain as well. Lily said with a gentle smile. Killed the strongest dark wizard alive at the age of 1 day old, that's my girl. Minato said with a proud smile. If any of them had bothered checking the sleeping older child, they would have seen her eyes glow with a Rinnegan when Dumbledore used the spell. 7 years later. Run. The voice shouted at her, and so she complied. Narumi ran through the streets and back alleys at a quick pace. She was more than fast enough to avoid the crowd of drunken fools behind her, but she didn't want to go too fast, lest one of the ninjas notice and question her about her speed. It wasn't long before she lost them and arrived at her favorite place in the village, Ichiraku's ramen shop. She didn't know why, she just loved ramen, it filled her up and it tasted great. Though it wasn't very healthy and the voice in her head often forbade her from eating it too often. Still, it was quiet now and that meant she was clear to eat. She sat down and the friendly chef Ichiraku smiled brightly at her and asked if she wanted her usual. She nodded and the man got to work making her food. Narumi had grown a lot in the last 7 years, she was tall for 7, though was slightly underweight. Her hair was now down to her mid-back and was still the same color as the day she was born. Whenever it was dark out, her hair and eyes looked to be black. Her skin was pale like her mother's, and she was quiet and reserved most of the time, unlike her sister, who was loud and boisterous. It was annoying to Narumi, so what if her sister was the girl who lived? It's not like she actually did anything. The Nine Tails did most of the work. True, the voice remarked as Narumi thought about her sister. The voice had been with her since she was born, it was always there, offering her advice, training her into a better fighter, teaching her how to use her immense power. It was deep and gravely, definitely belonging to a man. And at times it could be harsh and even antagonistic, but it was always there for her, and it often referred to her as its grandchild. After a moment more, Narumi received her first bowl of ramen and quickly began munching. As she ate, her thoughts turned towards her ramen-obsessed father and sister, the two loved the stuff, even more than Narumi did. You'd think it'd be a common bonding point, but you'd be wrong. At first, it saddened Narumi when she thought about how little her parents cared for her, they never really talked to her or listened when she talked, no, it was always about Naruto. Naruto this, Naruto that. Daddy, can you train me? No, I need to teach your sister. Mommy, can you show me magic? No, I need to teach your sister, maybe later. That's how it always was. She would ask, get shot down, and go cry about being ignored. At this point though, Narumi was just beginning to move past it, she had stopped asking her parents for help and just stuck with the voice, it never lied to her, and though it wasn't always kind, it did help her and support her, and when she accomplished her task, she was complimented. She stopped talking altogether with her parents and godmother, Tsunade, after a recent event. That event effectively cut her off from ever going to them for help again. When she first saw her father perform tree walking, Narumi immediately decided that it was a good way to impress her parents without showing off too many of her skills, and when she went to show her parents and godmother what she had accomplished, they were less than pleased. They had screamed at her for trying something like that without their permission, they had said she was ungrateful, and they said that she was just trying to outshine her sister. Poor Narumi was stuck under their hateful gazes for what felt like an eternity. Hell, if it wasn't for Uncle Remus and Kakashi being in the room at the time, Narumi was sure her mother would have slapped her. She was glad they were there. Kakashi was her father's student and like an older brother to her, she really liked him, while Remus was one of her mother's friends from her school days, he was always kind and treated the twins equally. Though out of all the bad that occurred that day, there was one good thing that came from it, she did cement her relationship with Remus and Kakashi. As when they saw Lily's hand raise, Remus let out an angry growl and was at her side in a flash, and Kakashi was immediately between Lily and Narumi. That's enough, I think. Kakashi had stated. Kakashi, what are you doing? Lily asked. Stopping you from hurting your child. And you. Kakashi stated, pointing at Minato, who looked a little surprised by Kakashi's intervention. You saw what she was about to do, you were really going to let your wife hit one of your children, your heir to be exact? Kakashi asked with a dangerous look in his eyes. This is none of your concern, Kakashi, she needs to learn to be patient and not act out like this. Minato replied. Act out? She walked 5 feet up a wall. How is that acting out? Remus asked with another growl as he eyed the two darkly. She could have hurt herself. She needs to learn that not everything happens when she wants it to happen. Gods, maybe we weren't hard enough on her when she was really little, but that changes now, if she ever wants to lead my clan, she will need to learn patience, I won't have an obnoxious child leading my clan. If she doesn't shape up, then the role is going to Naruto. The only reason it hasn't already is because poor Naruto already has enough on her plate. Minato replied coldly. Remus and Kakashi both stared at Minato with wide eyes, unable to believe the garbage the fourth Hokage was spewing right now. I hate you. Everyone heard someone say. They all glanced around until their eyes fell on Narumi, who had her head bowed. What did you say? Lily asked, unsure whether she heard her right or not. I said that I hate you. Narumi growled as she looked up at them, her eyes had taken on a crushing blue appearance, they almost looked like bottomless pits, the kind that if you looked into them for too long, you would fall in and keep falling forever. You little brat. Don't you talk about your mother like that. Apologize now. Tsunade barked out angrily. As she saw the look of shock and anger on Minato and Lily's faces. Narumi glared at them for a moment, staring at each one of their faces and the angry looks they held. She didn't see any love in their eyes, any regret for the things they said. The lack of compassion and remorse was what put the nail in the coffin for her. Finally, she let out an angry huff. You know what? I'm done. Narumi muttered. What? Remus asked. I'm done with those three. I couldn't care less about leading this stupid family. And I don't care about being your daughter anymore either. I'm leaving. Narumi stated as she turned and started walking out. Get back here, young lady. You're not leaving. Lily shouted at her as she broke out of her stupor. Lily pulled out her wand, but before she even had it raised Narumi vanished in a body flicker. She can perform the body flicker at 7. That is astounding. Remus stated, to which Kakashi nodded. Well, what are the two of you waiting for? We have to find her. Minato ordered as he walked past them. Why? Remus asked with a defiant look in his eyes. Remus, Minato replied angrily, sensing his old friend's reluctance. Not a ninja, so nope. Remus said with a smile and a wave as he walked out. And I believe you expressly told me to take the day off and have fun, so bye. Kakashi replied as he too vanished in a shunshin, leaving a disgruntled-looking Minato staring at where they'd been. It had been about 2 weeks since then and she hadn't been home once. The Anbu would sometimes corner her, but it was never really her. She had multiple shadow clones wandering the village, a technique the voice had taught to her, so they never were able to corner her. She was a master of pranking, and because of the viscous pranks she had already pulled on a few Anbu, they had since become wary of approaching her and just decided to follow at a distance. It seems her father had adopted the approach that she'd see how hard it was to live alone and come crawling home sooner or later, as long as she didn't leave the village and his Anbu kept an eye on her, she could do whatever for all he cared. Narumi actually found it easier to live on the streets because she didn't have to deal with heartbreak every time she went home. There were times when she would be locked out of the house, they would forget to include her at dinner or even forget to take her on their trips. Now though, she didn't have to deal with any of that. Besides, by this point in her life, she had already taught the people of the village that it wasn't good to mess with her. She had been beaten by the villagers a few times when she was younger and ended up hospitalized, but she always got her revenge. Though a lot of people saw her as the fox itself, they knew that to lay a hand on her would mean suffering for one's entire family. The Hyuga were the flagship for this when Narumi rescued their heiress from being bullied, only to be slapped by the girl's bodyguard when he finally showed up. Subsequently, the clan then spent the next month suffering prank after prank until the head of the clan, Hiashi, cornered the girl and in no uncertain terms told her to stop or suffer the consequences. The following month, Hiashi was viciously tortured and turned into the laughingstock of the village to the point where when he approached the girl again, he dropped to his knees and begged her to leave his family alone. Narumi agreed but told him that if any Hyuga so much as glared at her for whatever reason, she would revisit them and their suffering would continue. People learned fast after that, and now only the drunk or socially suicidal would dare mess with her. Narumi smiled at that memory and downed the last of her ramen. She placed the money on the table, said goodbye and left for her next adventure. Whatever it was, she was sure it would be fun. To be continued. Chapter 2. Brother. Narumi wandered around the village bored out of her skull and more than a little depressed. It sucked having no friends or people to talk to. The only 4 people she had to talk to were Kakashi, who was always on missions, Remus, whenever he showed up, and the Ichirakus, but they were always working. She didn't have any friends her own age, or pretty much any age. It led to things being unbearably lonely, and the glares and whispers from the people around just made things worse. She was only a couple of weeks away from turning 8, and that meant the Kyuubi festival was going to occur. Which meant she would spend the day dodging drunks and hiding from dingbats who thought hitting a child made them heroes. It never made much sense to her why the villagers chose to target her and not Naruto. She only contained the soul and body of the Kyuubi, not any of its power. If the 4th Hokage was as good at sealing jutsu as everyone claimed he was, then they should have no worries for Narumi, as the demon had no power to fight back with. It's not like it could undermine the seal in any way, so they shouldn't be concerned about her. The voice had once said that he doubted it had anything to do with that. He was sure most people simply saw her as an avenue to pursue their desires for revenge and justice. They had all lost so much and had no means of coping or moving on, so they sought whatever answer they could find. So what if it was irrational, so long as it made them feel better, that was all that mattered. When they looked at Naruto, they saw a hero, and that kept them from seeing her as a means to exact revenge on the fox. She also only held its power, so hurting her wouldn't hurt the fox at all. In Narumi they saw a powerless soul and a means of getting some measure of revenge. This led Narumi to concluding that she would never have safety here in the village. People would never see her, they'd only see the fox and a means of hurting it. It was these thoughts that led Narumi to begin pondering her future and what path she would take. The idea of becoming a ninja had always been on her mind, yet with these conversations, she became more convinced that becoming a leaf ninja was a path to nothing but further pain and more heartbreak. What else could she do if she didn't become a leaf ninja? An idea didn't immediately take shape, so she was left to ponder what she could do to end her immediate boredom. She could always keep training, but that was boring. The voice in her head called her a prodigy unlike any seen before, but she didn't really have a basis to compare. She also wasn't sure if he was just trying to encourage her or if he was just exaggerating. Sure, in a fight she could easily take any Chunin in the damn village, and if they weren't expecting it, she could probably do some damage to a Jonin as well, but that spoke more about the skill of the village's ninja as a whole, rather than her abilities. She was good, but she hadn't had much of an opportunity to truly compare herself to another fighter. Her strength was her weakest point easy since she was still little, she couldn't work on increasing her muscle mass until later, otherwise she may damage her body. Speed-wise she was faster than any Chunin in the village, and thanks to her godmother's drunken meandering Narumi, was able to get her hands on some of her techniques, including info on her super strength. She still hadn't perfected it and could only triple her strength, while her godmother could multiply her strength 100 times. Narumi was okay at medical ninjutsu, but since she didn't know where to start, the most she knew how to do right now was numb pain. Her genjutsu was alright, she only knew a handful of techniques, but they were decent, better than most genin, and even a few chunin. The jutsu was one of her major skills, as the voice in her head often claimed how it loved to bash people's faces in with a kick or a punch, and Narumi couldn't disagree, she'd broken a few noses and wrists in her day, and it was fun to hear the crack or popping sound as bone broke, at least in her humble opinion. Her skill in shuriken jutsu was great, she was fully capable of curving shuriken around multiple objects to hit a target 30 yards away, and she could take the wings off a fly with a senbon at 10 yards, so her accuracy was awesome. She was still too little to try to learn how to use a sword, but she liked the idea and was definitely into learning how when she was bigger. She was just now learning seal characters and found that she actually really enjoyed it, it calmed her when drawing out the kanji for seals. She still hadn't made many, about the best she could do was make a simple storage scroll, but still. Where Narumi really shined was in skills that required less finesse. Like ninjutsu and spellcasting. She didn't have a wand, but found she didn't need one, she could cast a few spells with a wave of her hand, though they were much more draining than she assumed they would be if she had a wand. Sadly there weren't any wandcrafters in the elemental nations, and the only other wand around was her mother's, but she didn't want anything to do with that woman. Right now she only knew 4 offensive spells, 2 defensive spells and like 6 utility spells like Lumos, which she had taken from some of her mother's old books one time, before being caught and having them taken away and hidden. Ninjutsu on the other hand was a much less trying endeavor. She quickly figured out that she had a unique chakra system and magical core. She learned from Uncle Remus that wizards and ninja use 2 different parts of their magical pathways to draw energy from. Wizards draw from their core itself, while ninja draw from their chakra coils or Taketsu points. Because of this a wizard bypasses the 8 inner gates and draws directly from where their magic is made. This means that when they start they have much more energy at their disposal than ninja, but not full access to their magic, as most magic is pumped out of their core as it's made. This led to wizards recovering magic quickly and suffering from less physical exhaustion, but at the detriment of their magic being less dense. Ninja on the other hand gain a benefit later in life, since they draw energy from the coils, which are after the 8 gates, meaning they have less magic to use. The benefit comes after a few years of using chakra, because the active use of chakra causes one's coils to expand, thus causing their core to speed up production of magic. So, it has been found that the few people who practice both magic and jutsu are exceedingly more powerful. Minato, Voldemort and Dumbledore are a few noteworthy individuals who practice both forms of magic. So anyway, Narumi possessed a unique magical system. If a Hyuga were to look at her with their Byakugan, they would see a slightly larger than average core and chakra coils. What they wouldn't see is how tightly packed all of the magic in her body was. According to the voice in her head, her natural chakra control was so high and her body so unique that chakra and magic did not escape her pathways or core, thus giving the illusion that she only had an above average amount of magic, when in reality she had an incredible amount of chakra, more than Jiraiya even, and he had the second largest reserves in Konoha, after her twin Naruto. The voice didn't quite know what to make of her incredible amount of chakra. At such a young age, and without the actual power of the 9 tails within her, she should have just had average above average chakra amounts. Having more than one of the Sannin, that was something that shouldn't have been possible without being a full Jinchuriki. It had no explanation, and Narumi certainly didn't know what to make of it. All that she knew was that having that much chakra made performing magic much easier. Thus, she was a savant when it came to ninjutsu. She hadn't yet figured out her base element, but if she had to guess it was likely fire and lightning, but she'd have to buy chakra testing paper, and she already had to deal with outlandish prices when buying food and clothes. No way was she spending money on a piece of paper when she didn't have any problems with learning any of the 5 elements. In all actuality, fire and lightning weren't even the easiest, they were just her favorites. According to the voice in her head, fire and wind were his favorite because independently they caused immense damage, but when combined they were unstoppable. He didn't blame her for liking lightning over wind, it fit her personality better. All in all, she had like 30 ninjutsu of varying elements under her belt. So, when it came down to it, Narumi was good to great in all areas, but because she didn't have a teacher, she couldn't really pull ahead in any area, so she just jumped between them. One skill that she possessed that no one, not even her famous sister, could boast of having was being one incredibly tough little girl. Narumi could take one hell of a beating, as she would often have jutsu matches with her shadow clones and handicap herself in some manner or another. So, she toughened up quickly, the beatings from the villagers didn't hurt in that department either. She loved the rush when fighting, she never felt more alive than when she was fighting, actually fighting. Sadly, the number of people that could actually fight her was getting smaller by the day. However, the number of people who could dance with her was still high. That's what the voice called it, he said, unless at full power, you are in danger of dying, it's not a fight. A fight is when two forces have a chance to win. When there is no chance or it's so astronomically small that it is not worth mentioning, it's not a fight. He called any other bout between two warriors a dance. She liked his meaning and followed that creed. If she had to guess, there was about 300,000 ninja in the leaf, probably less than 5,000 could make her fight, and those were all jonin and anbu, and that list was getting shorter with each passing day. Her natural abilities were simply incredible, there was no other way around it. Why was she so skilled, why did things come so naturally to her, she didn't know. The voice in her head simply said that she was special. What it meant by that? Narumi had no idea. So, if not training, what else could she do? After a few moments of not being able to think of anything, she just decided to train anyway. At least it would give her something to occupy her time. Narumi made her way to one of the rarely used training grounds and just started her normal exercises. She started running around a nearby lake, and after that was finished she worked more on her control, so she went to the tree to practice her bounding skill. Bounding was the term used to describe the act of jumping onto a surface and using chakra to stick. Naturally, it was harder than tree walking or water walking, as you only had a fraction of a second before gravity grabbed you and pulled you down. The hardest form of this training was going from water to a solid surface that hung above the water, forcing the person to keep flipping upside down to get their feet beneath them. It was very tiring, most chunin weren't able to do it for more than a couple of minutes before either tiring or barfing. It had probably been 30 minutes when Narumi landed upside down on a tree limb and sat there. She let out a few tired breaths when suddenly she felt something cold and sharp press against her neck. You've got some stamina there, girlie, but you should know never to let your guard down. A voice mockingly stated from behind her. So yet another fool wants to receive a rather unfavorable beating. Narumi stated in a cold tone. Brave words, little girl, but I'm the one holding the blade. The voice replied in a condescending tone. Alright, well then, let's see what's faster, your blade or fire, Narumi stated. What? The figure asked, but he didn't get time to contemplate her statement as the Narumi he held captive suddenly and violently exploded, sending the would-be assassin flying into a tree. He slammed violently into it and fell to the ground, the wind knocked out of him. Holy shit, how does a 7-year-old know the shadow explosion jutsu? The man asked while trying to regain his footing. That, like living, is no longer your concern. Narumi stated coldly. She wasn't sure she could go through with her statement and actually kill the man. She'd never killed anyone before, but for some reason his attempt on her life made her feel as if his life had just been made forfeit and now it was her right to take it. It was a vicious thought, uncharacteristic of a child. It was odd enough to cause her to pause. Wait. Another voice shouted as a weasel mask Anbu landed next to the downed man, who turned out to be a crow mask Anbu. Narumi stepped out of the shadows and stood before the two men as the crow masked one finally made it to his feet. He was holding his ribs, obviously, they were broken from the force of the explosion. Why should I? He attacked me. Tried to kill me. That makes his life forfeit. Narumi replied darkly. Please, Lady Narumi, my idiot friend did not mean anything by his attempt, he was just trying to scare you. Weasel tried to explain. And why, pray tell, did this moron think that placing a blade to the throat of someone with my reputation was a good idea? Narumi asked, her eyes alight with fury. That's just why. Crow stated. I heard all about you from the others. Our captain, dog, he speaks highly of you and he never speaks highly of anyone. I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I saw you training and it truly looked like your guard was down, so I decided to see what he was talking about. I was only intending to scare you, I swear. Had I known those stories were true, I would have never tried something like this. Crow explained in pained breaths. The two men knew that Crow was in no condition to fight. That technique had been at full power and it damn near killed the fool for his prank. Both men knew that in his condition, Crow couldn't fight a kitten, let alone a 7-year-old, with a reputation of screwing the Anbu sideways every chance she got. Well, Crow, you should have studied your target more. If you had, you would have known that I never drop my guard around the fools of this village. Narumi stated with the glare in her eyes never leaving the two men. Please, my lady. He is very sorry and meant no harm, allow him to get medical attention and we will find some way to repay you. Weasel offered. Yeah, I'm truly sorry, there was no other motive besides spooking you. It was a stupid idea and I regret it. If there's anything I can say or do to apologize, please let me know. Crow informed her as he tried to straighten up and look professional. Narumi looked like she was thinking their offer over when a voice suddenly whispered a suggestion. After a moment Narumi replied. Go get your ribs checked out. The two of you will be back tomorrow and every day that you are free from your Anbu duties afterwards for a full 30 days. During which you two will teach me. Once your 30 days are up, you'll have repaid your debt, is that fair? Narumi asked, with a menacing grin. The two men shared a look where Crow simply shrugged and Weasel let out an audible sigh. Very well. If this will forgive this trouble he is in, then we'll do it. Weasel replied, receiving a nod from Crow. Good. See you tomorrow, boys. And try not to sneak up on anyone for a while, Crow. You might get bitten again. Narumi said with a girlish chuckle as she turned and skipped merrily away, leaving the two men confused and more than a little creeped out. Next time Shisui, when I tell you it's a bad idea to do something. Listen. Weasel stated with a sigh. Yeah, don't get your panties in a bunch Itachi, it could be worse. Besides, a month learning what she can really do. I'd gladly get blown up again for a chance to see that. Crow replied. Weasel simply shook his head and let out another sigh before stepping up to help support Crow. Let's get you to the hospital, we'll discuss your antics later. Weasel stated as the two started walking. Yeah. I'll be sure to pay attention, mother. Crow replied dismissively. You'd best. Otherwise, I'll have to tell the rest of the team how you were just defeated with one jutsu that was used by a 7-year-old girl who isn't even a ninja yet. Weasel said with a bit of mischief evident in his voice. You wouldn't dare. Crow muttered. Would I? That is the question. But it's for later. For now, let's get you to the hospital and figure out the damage. Weasel replied. The next day, the two Uchiha arrived on the field to find Narumi meditating peacefully. After a couple moments of silence, the older of the two cleared his throat loudly enough for her to hear. Welcome back, Weasel, Crow. Narumi stated as she opened her eyes and stared at the two Uchiha. Hey girlie, we're out of uniform right now, don't call us that, just stick with our names. The older of the two said, as the younger just adopted a disgruntled look. Very well. What are your names? Narumi asked. Shisui and this is Itachi. Shisui replied. I blew up Shisui of the body flicker. That's awesome. Narumi suddenly cheered with glee. Hey, you caught me off guard, and Shisui tried to defend himself. You had to have your friend here stop me from maiming you. I'd constitute that as a win in my book. Narumi told him with a smirk. She's got you there, Shisui. Itachi replied with a smirk of his own. Shut up both of you. Let's just get this started. Shisui replied, obviously embarrassed. Alright then. Let's begin. What would you like to learn first? Itachi asked. Well, I know a bit of pretty much everything, shinobi-wise, so I can learn and grow in any area. Narumi replied with a thoughtful look. Well, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Shisui asked. He was very interested to hear her reply, since being injured, he'd started to believe the things his captain had said about her and was immensely curious to hear from her own lips just how strong she was. My strengths are probably ninjutsu and taijutsu. My weaknesses are probably jinjutsu and medical ninjutsu. Narumi replied after a moment of thought. Well, cool. I can help you improve your strengths and Itachi here can work on your weaknesses. I'm great at ninjutsu and taijutsu. Itachi's great at everything, but where he really shines is jinjutsu. Shisui stated, earning a nod from Itachi. Alright, let's just switch off, weaknesses today, strengths tomorrow. Narumi suggested with a happy grin. Hey, whatever you want. You're the one holding us hostage here. Shisui replied with a chuckle. Yeah, and I'm gonna milk this for all it's worth, sensei. Narumi responded with a wicked grin. The two Uchiha shared a look before chuckling at the little girl's antics. Alright, let's begin then. Itachi stated. And for the next 30 or so days that's how it went. The two men would show up early and train Narumi for a couple hours. It shocked the two at how good she was. Both were considered prodigies and she wasn't nearly up to their level yet, but damn if she didn't give both men a run for their money. Where she couldn't match them in skill or strength, she could beat them in stamina and chakra. Plus, the two men didn't expect her use of spells. Itachi spent a good portion of their 4th day together dodging stunners. Narumi had fun with the two guys. They were both kind, and while Shisui would often tease her and get into competitions with her, he was always respectful. Itachi was the same way, he may tease her every so often, but he treated her with respect. Another good thing about them was that neither man pried into her reasoning for never going home. They learned the truth when Dog asked them where they had been spending all their free time. When they told him, he in turn told them the things that had happened at the Namika's estate a couple of months back and asked the two to keep an eye on her. The two men were shocked and angered that their own Hokage would treat his child like that. Both men lost a lot of respect for the fourth after hearing that. Neither ever let on that they knew the truth. They quickly realized that Narumi was a prideful girl and that to pity her was tantamount to insulting her, and she didn't take insults kindly. Narumi learned quickly, and it often left the two men flabbergasted at how she could learn a B-rank ninjutsu in one day and have it mastered within a week. Her massive chakra stores allowed her to spam incredibly high-level techniques, while her incredible control allowed for her to use delicate techniques and abilities. On October 10th, Narumi's birthday, she spent most of the day alone, but shortly before sunset, Shisui and Itachi found her and gave her birthday presents. Narumi was ecstatic, she was so happy that she was bouncing around the whole time thanking the two profusely. She had received a tanto and wakizashi from Shisui. Both were plain blades obviously just meant to be cast away when they broke, but he figured she could use the tanto now and learn with a wakizashi before moving up to a larger sword when she got older. Itachi got her some blank scrolls, along with new ink and brushes, for her sealing practice, plus he got her 3 ninjutsu scrolls. One was a beginner scroll for medical ninjutsu, so she could finally get started with that, and the others were 2 C-rank water-style techniques. She was so happy with her gifts, she never got anything good on her birthday. The only ones who ever got her good stuff was Rimas and Kakashi. Speaking of which, Kakashi had stopped by a little bit later and gave her his gift, a fresh pack of shuriken, kunai and senbon, since hers were all getting dull or broken. He also dropped off Rimas's gift since it was that time of the month again and he was off dealing with his furry little problem. Rimas's gift was a book on basic transfiguration spells. Rimas knew of her ability to use spells without a wand, so he knew she would make good use of this gift. Eventually though, her time with Itachi and Shisui came to a close. The 30 days were up and she didn't expect to see them as often anymore. They both promised to keep showing up and helping her whenever they could, but still, she had held them for long enough, and though it saddened her immensely that she wouldn't have them as a constant in her life any longer, she had come to care about the two enough to let them leave, if that's what they wanted. To her surprise, not 2 days later, Shisui showed up again and offered her more training. It seemed the man had come to view her as a little sister and had enjoyed the time they spent together. Narumi was so happy to have a true friend like Shisui, sure he was like twice her age, but still, he was so nice to her. And treated her how she wanted to be treated. Things continued like that for a couple more weeks. Shisui showed up as often as he could to train her. Sometimes Itachi would come with, but with his recent promotion to Anbu captain, his free time got slashed immensely. Still, Narumi wasn't bothered by it, she came to view the two men as her older brothers and was always so excited to meet with them. One day about a month after her birthday, she and Shisui sat atop the Hokage mountain, watching the sunset. They had just finished another rigorous day of training and honestly, in Shisui's opinion, the girl was going to soon pass him up. She just learned everything so fast and her skills grew at such an astounding rate that she was often measurably stronger after each passing day. Today had been the closest she'd come to beating him in a straight-up fight. The fresh cut on his cheek was a testament to how close her blade had gotten. Shisui couldn't help but smile as he thought of her progress. It really made him proud as a sensei that his student had come so far in such a short time. He glanced over at her and saw her staring into the sunset with a content smile on her face. All he could do was smile as well and wonder what tomorrow would bring. 6 days later. Some time had passed and the two continued their training. Currently, they were both on the training field, going all out against each other. Shisui had his Shunshin technique at full power and was flying across the field to avoid Narumi's jutsu. He came to a halt and began to speed through hand signs, preparing to launch a fireball at her when he spotted something odd. Narumi was watching Shisui intently as he came to a sudden halt. He had really been hauling ass in this fight. She hadn't yet landed a single strike on him and it was starting to piss her off. She watched him begin to speed through hand signs and for a moment his hands moved too fast to follow, but then, time seemed to slow down. She saw his hands move clearly, she could understand the hand signs and recognize the jutsu. She saw Shisui pause for a second as he stared at her, almost like something had startled him. "What?" Narumi called out as he stopped his hand signs and started to walk towards her. "Your eyes, they're glowing red," Shisui stated, more than a little worried since he knew what she held within her. "Huh? Red?" Narumi replied as she fished out her tanto and looked at her reflection. She saw that her eyes were indeed red and there, next to each pupil was a single tomo. "Is that?" Narumi began. "The Sharingan," Shisui replied once he was close enough to confirm it. "The gift, one your father never managed to gain," the voice in her head stated. "The gift from who?" Narumi thought back in reply. "Me. I told you, girl. You're my grandchild," the voice replied. "So that means you're an Uchiha?" Narumi thought as she admired her reflection. She'd always wanted eyes like the Uchiha, she just felt a connection to those powerful red eyes. My girl. I was an Uchiha. Now I am nothing more than a ghost and your guide. The voice replied with a bit of anger present in its voice. So that means, Naruto and Narumi began to think but was cut off by the voice. No. That brat could never possess eyes like yours. Even if she could, the fox's power will never allow its host to manifest our Dojutsu. The voice explained. Narumi couldn't help but smile at that. She was unique, her damned sister wasn't so special after all. This is amazing. You're an Uchiha, wow. I guess that explains the nearly black hair and eyes. You must have gotten the stronger genes. Said Shisui with a look of amazement plastered on his face. Yeah, my grandfather was an Uchiha. Narumi said as she continued to look into her eyes. Wow, since your mother isn't from this land, that means your father has to be of Uchiha descent. Shisui thought aloud. Yeah, no shit. Wonder where the blonde comes from. Narumi muttered. No clue where that blonde hair came from. He had black hair and eyes when he was little. The voice stated. So you really are my grandfather? How's it you are talking to me? I have never asked you that. Narumi asked. It's complicated. Long story short, I placed a piece of myself in your father, but it got locked away. When he sealed the fox's soul into you, he also sealed a piece of me into you as well, and unlike how it was with him, I can freely talk to you. The voice explained. Oh okay. Well, I've always just called you voice, but now that I know you aren't just a figment of my imagination, do you have a name? Narumi asked. Yes I do. My name is Madara, the last true member of the Uchiha's ancestors, the Uchiha clan. All Narumi could do was gape at that statement and wonder what the rest of the day would bring. To be continued. Chapter 3. The incident. It had been a week since Narumi had activated her Sharingan. She and Shisui had been training with it non-stop and like everything else, she took to it like a fish to water. She already had 2 Tomo in both eyes and she felt her power soar with each passing day. With the power of the Sharingan, Narumi was now able to learn techniques even faster, she would just copy them and then master them. Most Uchiha made that mistake, they would just copy a technique, never work on it or master it in any way. Shisui hadn't told anyone about her Sharingan, not even Itachi, he wanted it to be a surprise for when he showed up for training again. Shisui was sure that by the time her Sharingan fully matured, she would finally surpass him. She'd already won a few of their fights by using her Sharingan to avoid his attacks and then just outlast him. It would be a while before she was more skilled than he was, but skill wasn't the only thing that mattered in battle. In a fight, every variable could ultimately be the deciding factor. You're doing amazing, Narumi. I suspect within a month your Sharingan will be fully mature. That's impressive. Shisui told her as the two stopped to rest for a few moments. Thanks, I've been working really hard. I can't wait to get the 3rd Tomo. Narumi replied happily. Soon. At the rate you're going it won't be that long. Shisui stated. Yeah, thanks. Narumi replied as she smiled. Shisui couldn't help but smile at his surrogate sister. She was progressing so quickly and she wasn't nearly as violent as she had been when they first met. It seemed that by associating with people, she was finally starting to trust others and come out of her shell. When she wasn't so reserved and shy, Narumi had a bright and bubbly personality. She was fun and playful, a mirror image of her twin sister. Hey, Brad, I've got a mission tomorrow, but once it's finished, how would you like it if I took you to the Uchiha compound to meet the rest of the clan? Itachi's got a little brother your age, I'm sure you two would like each other. Shisui offered. Really? Narumi asked, her eyes lighting up at the prospect of having yet another friend. Really? I'll take you there as soon as I get back. Shisui said as the little girl cheered with excitement. Thanks so much, Shisui. You're the best. She cheered as she ran up and hugged him. After a moment she pulled away and blushed, obviously embarrassed by her sudden outburst. You just wait until I get back, I'm sure the rest of the clan will be happy to meet an awesome girl like you. Shisui stated with a warm smile as he patted her on the head, causing her to blush again at the compliment. You know, if I ever had a sister I'd want her to be just like you. You're a good girl, Narumi, don't let anyone tell you differently. Shisui told her as he gave her a hug of his own. You're my best friend. I want you to know that. Narumi said to him and she hugged him tighter. I do, it makes me really happy to have a friend like you, Narumi. You keep up the hard work, I'll see you when I get back. Shisui replied, trying his absolute damnedest to remain manly and cool and not break into tears. After another moment the two parted and offered each other bright smiles. And with that Shisui said his goodbyes and headed off. Narumi watched him leave with a happy smile. She would be counting the days until he returned, she couldn't be more excited. 5 days later. Narumi sat in a tree at her usual training ground, it had been more than a few days since Shisui had left and naturally the girl was getting impatient. She couldn't wait until he returned. Narumi. A voice called out to her. Narumi immediately shot up and jumped out into the field, expecting Shisui to be there. Instead, she found Kakashi waiting for her. "Narumi, there you are, I've been looking for you," Kakashi stated. "Kakashi? What are you doing here?" Narumi asked. "I was looking for you. I wanted to see how you were doing," Kakashi replied. He obviously wasn't in a good mood if the inflection of his voice was any determining factor. "I'm fine. Just waiting for Shisui to come home from his mission," Narumi replied. "Waiting for Shisui? Wait, has no one told you what happened?" Kakashi said as his eyes suddenly fell to the ground. "What do you mean?" Narumi asked curiously, not liking the way Kakashi was acting. "Gods, don't tell me." Madara swore in her mind. "I'm so sorry, Narumi. Shisui killed himself a few days ago," Kakashi told her as he finally locked eyes with her. "What?" Narumi asked as her whole world suddenly came crashing down. "I'm sorry, Narumi. His body was found in the lake a few days ago. It looks like suicide," Kakashi informed her. Sorrow was evident in his voice. "He's dead? No. No. How can he be dead? I just saw him a few days ago. How?" Narumi felt tears begin to roll down her cheeks and her eyes suddenly began to burn. "I don't know what to say. It surprised us all. I've known Shisui for years. Suicide, it just never seemed like his style. I'm so sorry, Narumi. I know how much he meant to you," Kakashi stated as he took a step towards her and placed his hands on her shoulders. Narumi let out a growl as she shook his hands off and stormed away, stopping several feet from Kakashi. "No. Shisui, why? Why would you do this? Why would you do this to me, Shisui?" Narumi screamed as she dropped to her knees, tears fell freely from her eyes and her chest started to hurt. She kept replaying the last thing he said to her. "I'll see you when I get back." Those words, why? Why would he lie to her like that? That's all she could think about. Why would he say that and then kill himself? Damn it. Damn it all. "Shisui, you goddamn fucking liar," Narumi shouted, rage and sorrow evident in her voice. Narumi shot to her feet, her hands flying to her head as her eyes once again throbbed in pain. "Narum," Kakashi tried to say but was cut off when Narumi let out an ear-shattering scream. Kakashi had to cover his ears, her scream of sorrow and rage was so loud, it was unlike anything he'd felt before. This scream was filled with magic. Raw, undiluted magic. He felt the ground rumble a bit, saw small pebbles lift into the air. He saw the air around her distort and shift, almost as if the space around her was bending and twisting in accordance with her pain. Narumi's hands were now both clutching her face, covering her eyes. She was still screaming, at the top of her lungs, the sorrow in that scream, the sadness and rage, it tore into Kakashi's soul, it was a sound he would gladly kill himself to never hear again. From within her, Madara observed the event, not quite sure what to make of it. For a moment, he expected her to reawaken her Rinnegan, the power that tore out from around her was enough to make him think it so. Flashes of her time with Shisui shot through Narumi's mind as she felt her heart break more and more every time she remembered him smiling at her or complimenting her. "Shisui, why would you do this to me? I thought if it hurt so much, if you were hurting, why didn't you come to me? Why did you have to kill yourself? Why? How could I let this happen?" Narumi shouted. Her eyes felt like they were on fire. "It makes me really happy to have a friend like you," she remembered him say. "Why, Shisui? Why would you say that if you hurt so much? Why would you leave me?" Narumi cried. Kakashi wanted so badly to wrap his arms around her. To hold her tight and try to alleviate some of her pain. This girl was like a sister to him and he couldn't even get close enough to console her, all he could do was stare at the immense power she was letting off with amazement and fear. "Narumi, I know it hurts, but before you do anything rash, save your friend first," Madara ordered. His words broke through to her, allowing her focus to return. Narumi glanced over her shoulder at Kakashi, she found him still standing there, watching her with concern and worry. Kakashi watched as everything settled down. He watched as the air returned to normal and the floating pebbles fell back to the ground. Narumi's screaming had stopped and he could see her looking at him. "Narumi?" Kakashi asked, taking a careful step towards her. "Kakashi, I don't want you to get hurt, please leave," Narumi said, her eyes slightly obscured by her hair. "Narumi, I don't think," he began to reply but froze when he caught sight of her eyes. Well, he couldn't see her eyes completely, he could see a bright red glow coming from behind her hair and knowing what she was, he knew what the glow meant. Could that be? That's impossible. She only has its soul. It can't be the cause of this. Kakashi thought to himself in a moment of panic. Be sure to tell the Hokage not to send anyone here for a little while. I don't want any blood on my hands, Narumi told him as he backed away. Please don't hurt yourself, Kakashi thought as he finally shunshined away. What do you need? Madara asked. Something to relieve the stress, I just wanna sleep right now, Narumi replied. Okay, copy this. Madara ordered, and suddenly Narumi saw hand signs flash through her mind. Her Sharingan easily copied the technique, and she quickly spun away from the direction Kakashi had left in and sped through about 60 hand signs. Fire style. Great fire annihilation. Kakashi was about 200 yards off when suddenly a wall of fire 100 feet high shot into the air. It raced across the whole field and turned the place into scorched glass. He stopped his retreat and turned his gaze back towards the event, watching in astonished disbelief. Shinobi all over the Leaf Felter saw the wall of fire at one of the training fields. Whatever that technique was, it was definitely of much higher rank than what was usually practiced in the village. Minato spun around in his chair and looked out the window of his office. He could see clear as day, a wall of fire that stood tall above the tree line at one of the training grounds. For some reason seeing that jutsu gave Minato the strangest feeling of deja vu. Anbu arrived at the field a few minutes later to find it deserted. There was no one around that could be seen or felt. The Anbu quickly set to work putting the fire out. It was a daunting task that took nearly an hour and a lot of water-style techniques. Later, Narumi had started living in an old worn-out apartment building that was pretty much vacant a couple of weeks back, and aside from the roaches and occasional leaking it wasn't that bad, though it was dark and dank and it made her loneliness worse. She didn't like spending time there. "What is wrong with my eyes?" Narumi asked as she stared at her reflection in a mirror. "I'm sorry child, you have awakened our cursed eyes, second state the Manjikyu," Madara replied. "Ah, I see," Narumi stated as she glanced at her new eye design. Normally she would be excited to learn about her new eyes, but right now she could only feel anger, sadness, and apathy. Narumi did take note of her Manjikyu's design. It was a black three-sided star, AU. It's just like the three-sided star in Sasuke's MS. "Narumi, I need you to do something for me," Madara said to her. "I'm not in the mood, grandfather," Narumi replied as she wandered over to her bed and sat down. "I know, just please do this for me. I will not allow you to go blind from using those eyes. Follow my instructions, please," Madara asked of her. "Fine. What?" Narumi responded after letting out a tired sigh. "Use the summoning jutsu, but when you use it, think the name Zetsu," Madara told her. "Whatever," Narumi said as she did as she was told. Narumi bit her thumb and flashed through the necessary hand signs and slammed her palm into the ground. A moment passed as the sealed characters appeared when suddenly a poof of smoke occurred, and when it cleared, a strange-looking man-plant creature was there. "Ah, what the fuck are you?" Narumi yelped in surprise. "Me? You're the one who summoned me. Who the hell are you and how do you know us?" Zetsu asked as he shot forward and grabbed the girl, intent on squeezing the information out of her. He stopped however when his chakra made contact with hers and a very familiar voice shouted for him to stop. "Master Madara, is that you?" Zetsu asked aloud, shock present on his face. "Yes Zetsu, I need to explain a few things and then I need you to do some things for me," Madara replied. "Anything master," Zetsu replied. From there, Madara spent the next hour explaining who Narumi was and what had happened in the years since her birth. Zetsu listened intently and in turn told Madara what Obito was up to. Madara had very little clue about the Moon Eye plan, as the piece of himself that he put in Minato had been placed there years before Madara had met Obito. Memories from after that moment were fuzzy and disjointed. Madara guessed his older self had slipped into the curse of hatred after his son went missing. It was only because he was in Narumi did this Madara even know that Minato was his long-lost son, considering the man looked nothing like him anymore. Eventually Madara explained what had happened recently. "That is sad, young mistress. I am sorry about your friend." Zetsu offered his sympathy. "Thanks," Narumi replied bitterly. She had been listening intently to their whole conversation and was currently plotting Obito's death for loosing the fox upon the village and putting her in this situation. Though one thing did throw her for a loop when Madara explained what really happened when Voldemort came to kill her and her sister. "So I'm the real girl who lived?" Narumi asked. "Yep, killed a Dark Lord at a day old. That's my granddaughter," Madara responded proudly. "Wow, all these years and that bitch has been taking credit for something I did," Narumi thought bitterly. "So, what do you need me to do now, master?" Zetsu asked. "I want you to get me my old eyes and bring them here. I want you to transplant them into her. We're directly related so she'll be compatible. And then I want you to return to Obito, you'll tell him nothing that happened here and you will report on his movements. He has to come for the fox spirit and when he does, she is going to kill him," Madara ordered him. "You're giving up on the Moon Eye plan?" Zetsu asked, with a bit of shock. "Yes, I lay all of my hope for the future in this child. I've seen what she is capable of achieving. I know that she'll build a better world. Besides, she has me to help her," Madara replied, and even though he didn't have a body, Narumi could tell he was smirking. "Very well master, I will be back," Zetsu said as he offered Narumi a polite bow and then sunk into the ground. So why does he need to transplant my eyes? Narumi asked. Madara let out a sigh before explaining how the Mangekyou worked and about how the user would go blind after a while. Madara knew that she would need that power one day and he wasn't going to let her go blind from it. About 3 hours later Zetsu returned with 2 boxes, one small and one large. The large one held medical supplies, while the other held a jar that had 2 floating Sharingan eyes in it. Are you ready? Madara asked. Sure, let's do it. I'll need this power to kill Obito and Minato. Narumi replied. Out of curiosity, why Minato? Madara inquired. Shisui must have been worked into the ground. He must have been forced to do things he didn't want to. The stress must have caught up to him. Minato was the cause of that stress. That may not be true, but the thought makes me feel better. Narumi replied. Understandable, Madara said, offering her a metaphorical nod of approval. Alright, let's begin. You'll need to keep your eyes covered for a few days when I'm done. I won't be here when you wake up. Zetsu told her as he flashed through some hand signs and suddenly Narumi fell asleep. A couple of hours later Zetsu finished wrapping up Narumi's head. He then placed a hand on her head and channeled his chakra into her. Master? I'm finished. What would you have me do with her eyes? Zetsu asked. Put them into a storage scroll and seal them into her body in case we need them. Madara replied. Zetsu nodded and did just that. When finished, he cleaned up and promptly left, leaving no trace of himself behind. A few days later. Narumi wandered through the village. She could only just barely see through the cloth around her eyes. People took notice and whispered of her condition. Some were happy to see her in such a state, some were curious, while others were worried. Narumi hadn't spoken to anyone in the past few days. She hadn't seen Kakashi or Rimas, though she knew both of them were looking for her. She hadn't gone to Ichiraku's either. All she wanted to do was wallow in her sadness. Madara didn't comment on it. In his opinion, her reaction, sadness, depression and apathy were better than his own when in a similar situation years ago. Just you wait. We'll find proof, and when we do. That bastard is dead. Narumi heard an angry voice from just around the corner of where she was. I still can't believe Itachi would do that. I mean, they were best friends. Another voice stated, drawing Narumi's attention. Well, believe it. You should have seen the look on his face when we confronted him, he's obviously guilty. We'll get proof and then that boy is going down. Yet another voice added in. Shisui will be avenged. That bastard Itachi won't escape justice for long. The first man spoke again. The 3 men's voices were fading as they moved away. If they had stayed, they may have heard the light growling of their eavesdropper. Itachi, you killed Shisui. Why? Narumi growled, clenching her fist so hard it hurt. Sadly, the boy may have fallen to the curse of the Uchiha and killed Shisui to obtain the Mangekyou. Madara offered his thoughts. That son of a bitch. Narumi said aloud. I'm going to find that fucker and tear his goddamn heart out. The people around scurried away in terror at her outburst, hoping and praying that they weren't the target of the young girl's wrath. 2 days later. Narumi sat up in bed. Today was the day to remove the cloth and begin training her eyes. She quickly went to the nearest mirror and prepared to remove the cloth. Now my eyes were already at the stage of the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, plus I had Senju DNA in my body, so I have no clue what your eternal Mangekyou will be like. Madara informed the girl as she removed the cloth. She slowly opened her eyes, letting them adjust to the light of the room. After a couple moments of squinting, her vision finally came into focus. She looked into her red eyes and immediately noticed a new pattern. The 3-sided star was still present, but now there was a new pattern around the star. Madara told her that the new pattern was the same as his old EMS. Basically, think Madara's EMS, but with a 3-sided star in the center that connects to the 3 circular parts of Madara's EMS-1. Am I like them, please grandfather, teach me how to control the power of these eyes. Narumi asked with a wild look in her eyes as her new Sharingan glowed ominously. Of course, my girl. With this power, your dear cousin Itachi will fall before you. Madara replied with a vicious snarl at the name of the man who had caused his grandchild so much pain. 3 days later. I'm sorry, Sasuke. Itachi stated sadly as he looked down at his little brother's unconscious form. Time to go. Itachi thought as he turned to leave when suddenly he caught a glint heading right for him. Itachi barely dodged as 2 kunai went flying by. What the hell? Itachi thought as his eyes darted towards where the kunai had come from. His eyes widened in shock as they spotted his attacker. There, no more than 20 yards away, was Narumi Namikaze, and she looked pissed. Itachi Uchiha. I came here intending to beat some fucking answers out of you, but guess what I find when I get here? That's right, about 80 dead Uchiha, men, women, fucking children. A small part of me thought there might be a reason for you to do it, but this fuck. No, you deserve no mercy, you son of a bitch. Narumi growled at him with so much hatred, it actually made Itachi sweat. It took a moment, but Itachi was able to regain his composure. Afterwards, he adopted a neutral expression as he focused all of his attention on her. It was foolish of you to come here. The Uchiha were my only targets. Had you stayed out of this, I would have let you live. Itachi stated coolly. He didn't like threatening her, it was too much like threatening his brother, it just made him feel wrong, but he knew he had to. No, Itachi, it was foolish of you to remain in the village. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? Well, I did. I know you're the one who killed him. And now I'm gonna kill you. Narumi bit out through gritted teeth. So, you figured that out. I'm impressed. Not that it will do you any good now though. Itachi stated as he drew his sword. His Sharingan spun to life and as it did it came upon a shocking sight. The three Tomoe Sharingan was present in Narumi's eyes as well, at his surprised expression, she let a devilish grin cross her face. Surprised? I'm guessing Shisui never got around to telling you about my Sharingan. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's not like it would have done you any good. Narumi threw his words back at him. How is this possible? No. I can't worry about that now. I need to worry about getting out of here. I have no idea what Shisui taught her in the last couple of weeks, and with a fully mature Sharingan, plus her massive stamina and reserves, my chances of victory have fallen dramatically. I'm gonna have to use it, I only have one chance though, so I need to time it perfectly. Itachi thought as he launched his attack. Itachi raced at her at top speed, he brought his blade down to slice her chest, but Narumi deflected the blow with her tanto, she immediately channeled lightning chakra into her tanto and cut through Itachi's blade, rendering it useless. Itachi growled as he tossed his ruined blade away and jumped away from Narumi's follow-up strike. Thinking quickly, he hurled several shuriken at her, they hit her, but her body simply popped due to a substitution. Itachi jumped away just as two balls of water slammed into his previous position. He spotted Narumi standing just down the street, so he quickly sped through some hand signs, it unnerved him to see Narumi copy his movements perfectly. They both shouted, fire style. Great fireball jutsu. Suddenly two enormous fireballs appeared and slammed into each other, the two were equal in strength and therefore the two giant fireballs held in place. Narumi quickly brought her hands together in a cross pattern and suddenly two clones of herself appeared at her sides. Both clones flashed through hand signs and shouted, wind style. Great breakthrough. Itachi was shocked when he saw Narumi's fireball turn white hot and blast through his. Itachi had to jump back and grab Sasuke and then dive high into the air to avoid the powerful white hot ball of flames. He dropped Sasuke in a back alley and moved to confront Narumi again. She was quickly on him, she dove at him with her tanto, which had been infused with wind chakra, making it as long as a sword. Her blade easily cut through Itachi's kunai. Itachi quickly used this opportunity to launch his plan. You've grown, but you still don't possess the power to beat me. Itachi said with a smile as his manjikyu spun to life in his eyes. He instantly locked eyes with Narumi Tsukiyomi. You've lost, Narumi. This is the world of Tsukiyomi, here I am God. Itachi boasted as he prepared for her torture. So, you killed Shisui for these eyes, eh Itachi? Well, I wonder how well you can use them. Narumi replied as her eternal manjikyu spun to life in her eyes. Damn. Itachi muttered as pain shot through his eyes, he quickly realized the pain had come from Narumi's superior eyes, shattering his genjutsu. Shisui's death meant that much to you, Narumi. Itachi thought as he quickly realized just where she had gained such eyes. I'm so sorry. Itachi didn't have much time to contemplate how she had the manjikyu because he was suddenly and violently punched by a skeletal fist that was bigger than him. This fist was a deep blue in color with specks of dark red floating in places. Itachi knew immediately what this hand was. Narumi not only had the manjikyu, but she could also use Susanoo, meaning she had already learned and mastered the powers contained within both of her eyes. Since she could break Tsukiyomi, Itachi could only conclude that at least one of her eyes had the ability stored within them, what the other eye held, he did not know. Itachi muttered again as he began coughing up blood. He had been knocked back about 50 feet and he had slammed into a light post. He was now in a similar situation as Shisui had been a few months back. He internally berated himself for falling for the same blunder that Shisui had. He had underestimated her. A mistake that he hadn't thought possible considering, unlike others, he actually knew she was far stronger than she appeared. Still, he had allowed himself to doubt her skill and it had potentially cost him dearly. The moment he saw her Sharingan, he should have anticipated the appearance of the manjikyu due to her affection for Shisui and how his loss affected her. It was a mistake on his part, one he could not repeat if he wished to survive. He hadn't been anywhere near full strength when this fight began and she had come prepared to face him. He had spent a long night slaughtering his clansmen, a half-dozen battles had left him weary and exhausted. Using Tsukiyomi 3 times this night had also greatly diminished his chakra supply. He was most certainly in a bad position. Itachi took a moment to collect his breath before glancing up. His eyes widened with unease as he saw Narumi walking towards him, Mangekyou light in her eyes, her body encased in Susanoo. The unholy skeletal monster, with its glowing yellow eyes, the sight of it made Itachi suddenly fearful for his life. All he could do was watch as she got closer. Once she was close enough, one of Susanoo's arms raised into the air and a long blue blade materialized in it. Itachi knew that when she swung it, he would meet his end. As that thought went through his head, he suddenly remembered his little brother. He spun around and realized that he was sitting right in front of the alley he had left Sasuke in. Shit. Itachi thought as he dove back and grabbed Sasuke. He only had enough time to pick him up before the blade fell on the two of them. An explosion raced out from the impact of the sword, and everything in front of Narumi for at least 30 yards was blown away. Finally. You've been avenged, Shisui. Narumi muttered coldly, her eyes beginning to bleed from her heavy use of them. It would be some time before she was proficient with such powers, even with Madara's aid. Still though, these eyes had given her the edge she needed to take on Itachi. That wasn't very nice. A voice that sounded exactly like her grandfather spoke from the cloud of dust. A moment passed and she quickly spotted two figures. She noticed a tall man wearing an orange mask with a flame design on it. He had only one eye hole, and she could see the Sharingan staring at her menacingly. The masked man had his hand on the shoulder of one very alive Itachi Uchiha. In his arms was a likewise unhurt Sasuke. I was wondering what had taken you so long. I see you were caught up playing with Minato's spawn. The masked man stated, sounding amused. You really pushed that rescue Madara. A moment later and our partnership would be over. Itachi stated, just loud enough for Narumi to hear him. Sorry. I have a thing for the dramatic. Madara replied, with a dry chuckle. So you finally show yourself, Obito. I thought I would have to wait a little longer for you to show up, but I guess I was wrong. Narumi stated with a wicked smile, as she could clearly see the shock in Obito's eye. Her words were caught by Itachi, whose eyes also widened in surprise. You how? Obito sputtered out. Let's just say my grandfather knew Madara Uchiha, inside and out. You aren't him. Narumi replied as her Susanoo took on a more complete appearance. It grew muscle and its eyes changed from yellow to red. Well, you have to die now. Sorry, but I can't have anyone else knowing that. Obito stated as he drew a kunai. The only person dying today is you. Came another voice, as Minato and a horde of Anbu descended around the three Uchiha. Itachi now. Minato shouted, and Itachi swiftly pulled out one of Minato's signature kunai and rammed it into Obito's unsuspecting gut. Obito let out a grunt of pain as Minato suddenly materialized in front of him, Rasengan in hand, and tried to slam it into Obito's skull. Before Minato could close the gap, Obito's right arm instantly exploded into a wooden spear. Minato saw this and saw the wooden branch aimed right at Itachi and Sasuke. Thinking quickly, Minato turned, touched Itachi, and teleported both him and Sasuke away from Obito. Minato then quickly reappeared in front of Obito, Rasengan still in hand, and drove it at Obito. Sadly, he was already too late. Obito activated his intangibility technique and Minato passed through him. You'll have to do better than that fourth Hokage. It seems I've been played. Oh well, I got my revenge against the Uchiha anyway. Until we meet again. Obito chuckled and began to disappear. Damn, spread out. Try and locate him. Minato ordered. My lord, it's good you came when you did. Itachi spoke. What the hell happened to you? Minato asked with concern. Itachi simply let out a dry chuckle and glanced over at Narumi, who was watching the situation intently. Susanoo still hung over her menacingly and none of the Anbu wanted to get close. What are you doing here, Narumi? The fourth asked with concern as his eyes fell onto the monstrous construct that encased his eldest child. Dealing with a problem. Explain why you haven't killed him yet or move aside and let me do it. Narumi barked out angrily. Wait. Narumi, Itachi isn't the one at fault here. This was a mission he carried out on my orders. The Uchiha were planning a coup. So, we dealt with them before they could. We were also trying to lure out the masked man. That's why Itachi had to stay in character and had to fight you. Minato explained, obviously unnerved by the demonic figure that hung over his daughter. I'm sorry, Narumi. I didn't mean you any harm. And I didn't mean anything I said. Itachi stated. Be silent. Murderer. You killed Shisui. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't kill you right now. Narumi shot him a Sharingan-enhanced glare. Despite her fury, her vision was starting to blur. She had definitely taxed her eyes this night. Minato and most of the Anbu were mesmerized by the domineering aura of the 8-year-old. The power and intimidation of the Mangekyou only served to enhance her presence. I didn't kill Shisui. That was part of my cover. The masked man, Obito you called him. He thought that I had killed Shisui, that's why he was willing to approach me in the first place. I had to maintain my cover. Itachi explained, he couldn't help but wither under his once little friend's angry gaze. You expect me to believe that? Narumi growled as her Susanoo growled with her, causing the Anbu to back away in fear. It's true, Narumi. The reason my clansmen suspected me was because I did in fact forge Shisui's suicide letter. I was there when Shisui died, but it didn't happen in the way you think. Someone had wounded him, he was going to die from his injuries, so he instead took his own life. He was attacked by some unknown assailant who was after his eyes. Shisui knew of what was going to happen to the Uchiha, so instead of just dying from his injuries, he had ended his life so I could awaken these cursed eyes. Itachi told her, trying very hard not to break eye contact with her. Well, if you're so innocent here, then why did you kill all the Uchiha children? Surely, they couldn't have been part of your fucking coup. Narumi ground out, shooting her father a withering glare in the process. I didn't kill any of the children, the masked man did. I spared as many children as I could. Hopefully if he didn't find them, there should be a shed with about a dozen of them hiding in it. Itachi replied, this time he managed to hold eye contact with her. Narumi glared at him for a few moments, analyzing him, before letting out an angered growl. You know what? Just watch yourself, Itachi. You step out of line once, and you'll find yourself dead. A few tense moments passed before her Susanoo dissipated and her eyes returned to normal. She glared at everyone around her before turning and walking away. Narumi Minato tried to speak, but he was cut off when the girl shot him a glare that froze his blood. I recall stating I was done with you. Leave me alone. Narumi stated as she walked past him and past the Anbu who parted to let her by. All Minato could do was tremble as he kept replaying the look in her eyes when she glared at him. Her Sharingan had returned and in it was a pattern that was hauntingly familiar to him. After a few moments of silence, Minato sighed loudly before looking at the surrounding ninja. Let's get this place cleaned up. To be continued. Chapter 4. I am no longer yours. How's she doing? Remus asked as he strode up to Kakashi. Kakashi stood at the edge of a tree line, watching Narumi in the field about 50 yards away. Angry? Was Kakashi's only reply. Remus only scowled in reply as he laid eyes on his niece in all but blood. She sat meditating in the center of a training field, the wind was blowing quite rapidly around her, and just looking at the scene made the wolf within him bow submissively. I assume you aren't alone here? Remus asked. No. There's probably 30 Anbu in the tree line watching her. The council and elders believe she's dangerous. Kakashi replied, sounding angry at that statement. What? Those fools wouldn't know dangerous if it walked up and bit them on their rears. Sure, she's angry, but she has every right to be. She just lost her best friend and got mixed up in the whole Uchiha affair. I'm pretty sure anyone would be off-put at that point. Remus responded with a growl, obviously not happy with the leaf at the moment. True still. She beat Itachi, sure he was tired from killing the Uchiha, but he wasn't to the point of complete exhaustion and apparently, she managed to do some damage. If she could do that, who in this village can't she beat? Kakashi responded, trying very hard not to sound proud of that statement. Has anyone tried to approach her? Like Minato or Itachi? Remus asked. Itachi? No, the boy is smart, she made it perfectly clear that their friendship was over. If he wants to live, he'll be sure to steer clear of her for a good while. Sensei on the other hand, well, he didn't try personally, but Lady Tsunade and the third Hokage did. Kakashi replied. Oh? How did that turn out? Remus asked, knowing it probably wasn't good. Well, Kakashi began as he remembered back. Flashback. Hello, Narumi. It's good to see you again. Hiruzen Sarutobi stated as he and his student approached the young girl, whose name was on everyone's lips. Lord Third. Narumi replied without opening her eyes or moving from her meditative position. She'd spent all of her time recently trying to calm herself and allow her anger to fade away. All she wanted was some peace and quiet. Tsunade and I would like to talk to you. Hiruzen began after a moment of silence. Sorry, I'm really busy right now, come back some other time. Narumi told the two, her voice devoid of emotion. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting there, brat. Tsunade snapped back, irritated at the girl's aloof manner. Still more important than anything you might have to say. Narumi responded. What did you? Tsunade began as she took a menacing step forward, but her threat died in her throat as Narumi's eyes snapped open and she was greeted to the side of her eternal Manjutsu Sharingan. Tsunade, calm down. Hiruzen snapped at his student. Tsunade stared at her goddaughter's glowing red eyes, trembling slightly at the killing intent that was rolling off of her. This wasn't the largest amount of Kai she had ever dealt with, but considering it was coming from an 8-year-old girl, it was so much more stunning than normal. Tsunade. Hiruzen snapped again. This time her gaze shot to him and she saw the warning in his eyes. She managed a slight nod before taking a step back from the small girl. So you're learning? Narumi commented with a cruel grin, causing Tsunade to glare at her angrily. Please Narumi, we're just here to talk. Hiruzen stated, trying to defuse the situation. Then talk. But make sure she keeps her mouth under control. I'm sure she's smart enough to remember that my kind have an unnatural hatred for hers," Narumi stated. Both Tsunade and Hiruzen adopted looks of surprise at that. To think that this little girl knew and understood the animosity and downright hatred that the Uchiha and Senju had for each other was unnerving. "Your father," Hiruzen began after Hiri composed himself but was cut off by a sudden scoff that escaped from Narumi's lips. "That man is no father to me. All he's ever done is fuck the whore who birthed me." Narumi spat back, the venom in her tone caused Hiruzen to flinch and Tsunade to glare. "Narumi, your parents love you. They want you to come home," Hiruzen told her. "Ha. Bull. According to the fourth Hokage, I'm just some spoiled brat who's unworthy to lead his precious clan. Though I'm not surprised he wants me to come home, after all, now the whole village knows that I'm stronger than Itachi and that I possess a heightened form of the Sharingan. That would do wonders for his precious clan's reputation to have someone like me in it," Narumi replied with a cocky grin, though the grin never reached her eyes, which were still glowing malevolently. "Please Narumi, none of that is true. Minato is sorry for those things he said. And Lily has been absolutely distraught since you left. Even Naruto misses you," Hiruzen told her in a kind and gentle tone, not letting the fact that he was terrified of the menacing glow of Narumi's eyes show. "Now I know you're blowing wind up my skirt. Minato is a fool. Lily, my whore mother, was going to slap me for just showing them I could wall walk. I'm actually curious to know what she'll try to do to me after I nearly killed Itachi and showed the entire village that I'm stronger than my little bitch of a sister. And on that note, Naruto probably hasn't been happier since I left. She's probably pissed right now, knowing that I'm the stronger of the two of us, by far," Narumi sneered in reply. Hiruzen found himself confounded by how odd the situation was. Most notable of it all was Narumi's mouth. He'd never heard a child say such things. "Narumi. Don't try it, old man. My parents are idiots who deserve nothing but a lonely, painful death. I still blame Minato for getting Shisui killed. If he hadn't sent him on that mission, he wouldn't have been attacked and he wouldn't be dead now." Narumi cut him off. "Narumi," Hiruzen whispered with a look of sadness while Tsunade was sending Narumi a death glare. In her mind, she couldn't comprehend how someone who had a family would turn on them like this. Tsunade had lost most of her family when she was young, and yet here Narumi was spitting on them like they were roaches. The sheer audacity enraged the Senju princess. It never once entered her mind that she, along with the rest of the Namikas, had done nothing to earn Narumi's love. "My parents are nothing. It's like Kakashi always says. Those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. They abandoned me, and I'm family to them. I wonder what that makes them. What's lower than trash? And then what's lower than that? I hate them both. They can go die for all I care. I don't need them," Narumi stated coldly. "Do not speak of your parents like that, you little shit." Tsunade finally exploded in rage. She shot forward to grab the little brat and teach her a lesson, but was stopped by an enormous blue skeletal hand. The skeletal hand of Susanoo caught Tsunade's in its massive maw. "It seems you need to be taught a lesson, Senju scum," Narumi muttered with nothing but hate in her eyes. "Hashirama would be disappointed in you. You and your precious fourth Hokage have abandoned the principles he founded this village for." Tsunade adopted a look of shock at hearing that. No one had ever dared throw her grandfather's beliefs in her face like that. "Now you spoiled brat, let me show you the power of the last true Uchiha," Narumi shouted as Susanoo pulled Tsunade into the air and violently slammed her into the ground, creating a crater 30 feet wide and causing Hiruzen to leap back to avoid getting caught in the blast. "Fuck, I gods, that hurt," Tsunade thought as she was hefted back into the air and unceremoniously flung 100 yards into the forest, where she painfully punched through several trees before slamming into the ground with enough force to shatter multiple bones. If she wasn't a legendary healer, she would have been royally screwed by that attack. Like so many others, she had fallen for a near-fatal blunder. Narumi was no mere child. Back at the field, Hiruzen could only gape in awe at the little girl that had just bested a Sannin. Sure, Tsunade had been unprepared for just how strong Narumi was, but in the ninja world, there was no such thing as fair. Winning was winning, and she had just won against one of the best. A split second later, nearly 40 Anbu surrounded Hiruzen and Narumi. "Narumi Namikas. You are under arrest for attacking one of the Sannin," one of the Anbu shouted. "Come and try," Narumi shouted back as her eyes glowed wildly and more of Susanoo began to take form around her. Narumi's rage was nearing a boiling point. She wanted blood. "No. Stand down," Hiruzen ordered, taking notice of the look of vicious rage on Narumi's face. The girl wasn't backing down, she was willing to fight this out. The lack of fear in this small child was unlike anything he'd seen before. There was something malevolent about her. Something dark that he had only ever seen once before in the man that was once his student, Orochimaru. This kind of bloodlust, it was unnatural, and to see it in a small child shook the elderly Hokage to his core. But Lord Third she? One of the Anbu started to reply. Was just defending herself. Tsunade struck first and tried to attack a civilian, a child of all things. She will be the one who is punished for this, not Narumi. Go find her. I'll deal with this. Hiruzen ordered, in full Hokage mode. The Anbu didn't think for even a second to disobey, and they quickly vanished from the field. Smart man. Narumi commented, her glare turning to settle on him. I'm sorry for that, Narumi. I would not have brought her here had I known she would react like that. Hiruzen apologized. Whatever. Narumi stated as Susanoo vanished and she dropped back to the ground, returning to her meditation. The council and the Hokage would like you to join the academy to become a ninja. Hiruzen informed her after a moment of silence. Not interested. Narumi replied. You don't want to be a ninja? Hiruzen asked, sounding a little shocked. No, I do want to be a ninja. Just not a leaf ninja. I sent a letter to the fire capital a couple of days ago. They'll be sending out one of their jonin to deliver me my Ronin license. Afterwards I'm out of here. Narumi informed him, not hiding the smirk on her face as she did. Ronin? Wait, you're leaving? You can't. Hiruzen stated, shocked to his core by this revelation. And why not? My father seems dead set on Naruto becoming clan leader. So, I don't need to be here for that. I'm still a civilian so the council can't order me around. And once I get a Ronin license, I'm free to go wherever I want so long as I don't cause trouble. Narumi told him matter-of-factually, still unable to stop grinning. But the village Hiruzen began but was cut off by a snort from Narumi. The village hates me. Most either don't give a shit about me or think I'm the fox. I've never received any respect from any of them. They've even tried to kill me on occasion. I'm the lord of the Uchiwa clan, I will not be stepped upon by such worthless commoners. Narumi spat, channeling her grandfather for a brief moment. The Uchiwa? How do you know of them, Narumi? Hiruzen asked. I'm a direct descendant of them. Why wouldn't I know of them? Narumi replied. Few people do. How much of their history do you know? Hiruzen inquired, eyeing her curiously. I know that the Uchiwa were one of a number of clans that possessed the Sharingan. I also know that about 300 years ago, my great-great-great Samad grandfather led a bloody conquest to unite all of the Sharingan-wielding clans under one banner. When he was finished, all of the clans were either destroyed or united under the banner Uchiha. My grandfather was the last lord of the Uchiwa, and though he was cast out of the Uchiha, they couldn't remove him as the head of the Uchiwa. Narumi replied with pride. Passed out? You can't mean no. You're his grandchild. Hiruzen sputtered out as a look of pure horror shot across his face. Narumi's response was a menacing grin, along with opening her eyes to reveal her EMS. How? Hiruzen asked. That's unimportant. Just know that I have been named Lord of the Uchiwa and when the time comes, I will be taking all that is theirs with me when I leave. Narumi informed him with an ominous glint in her eyes. You can't. There is no Uchiwa anymore and Itachi is clan leader. Hiruzen told the girl. Yes, but as part of the joining of our families years ago, any descendant of the heads of the individual clans like I am for the Uchiwa may declare independence and there are only two courses of action at that point. Itachi can fight me to maintain the Uchiwa's power within the clan and we both know he won't do that. Itachi's smart, he knows the chance of him losing to me is too great and if he does lose, not only does he lose the Uchiwa, but I become ruler of the Uchiha. And once he knows of my intentions to leave, he won't risk me beating him and leaving his severely weakened family, penniless and homeless. Narumi informed the Hokage in such a way that the old man couldn't help but wither beneath her knowledge. I believe in chess, they refer to this as a checkmate. Narumi said with a smile. You do know that Itachi wasn't at full power last you fought. Hiruzen tried to threaten. True, but I studied under Itachi for a short time. I know some of his powers. Itachi shines at Jinjutsu, but with my Sharingan his most powerful Jinjutsu are worthless against me. Therefore, one of his greatest strengths is useless against me. So, no matter what, Itachi will be fighting with a handicap and unlike him, I don't spam Jinjutsu. He also can't use his enhanced Sharingan without risking blindness, I however don't have that problem. Not to mention I have more than 5 times the chakra that Itachi does. He can still put up a fight and he'd probably beat me, but his chances aren't good enough for him to risk it. Besides, the Uchiha are beyond rich, even if I ended up taking half of the clan's assets, so what? Less than a sixth of them are left. They still wouldn't want for anything. So your threats are hollow, old man. Narumi explained to him. Hiruzen couldn't argue with the girl. She knew her opponent and she was fully capable of facing Itachi. She was definitely hyping herself up, but her confidence was convincing. Her chances of actually beating Itachi were far lower than she insinuated, but there still existed the chance that she could beat him, and that said a lot. Please Narumi, the village was wrong. Give them a chance to correct their mistakes. Stay, and I promise things will get better. Hiruzen tried to bargain. Oh, I'm sure they would. This whole village would be wandering around kissing my ass, bunch of fucking hypocrites. Narumi muttered before shaking her head. Hiruzen stared at the girl for a few moments, obvious sadness present on his face. He was saddened that such a little girl had such little trust for her home. Very well. I will pass on this info to the Hokage and the council. Hiruzen told her as he turned to walk away. You do that. And tell the Anbu to hide better. I don't mind them spying, but if I keep catching glimpses of those fucking masks, I'm gonna start settling some accounts. Narumi threatened as she went back to meditating. Hiruzen nodded and departed. Then flashback. Wow. Rima stated. Yeah. I got the whole story from Lord Third. The council wasn't happy when they heard. Kakashi informed his friend with a chuckle. So? What did they do? Rimas inquired. They sent a team of Anbu to bring her to the council chambers. Kakashi replied. What happened? Rimas asked. She left two in comas, one lost his hand, one will never have children, and another is going to require 30 surgeries to get his face looking even remotely close to human again. Kakashi replied with a grimace, causing Rimas to grimace as well. How did that sit with Minato? Rimas asked after a moment. There was nothing he could do. Those Anbu tried to force a civilian to do something against her will, which is illegal. Therefore, Narumi had every right to defend herself. Now we're down 5 Anbu, with no idea how many will be able to stay ninja. Kakashi explained. I see. Rimas stated as he went back to looking at Narumi. He couldn't get over the feeling within him. The wolf was howling at him to flee or submit, there was obviously an alpha nearby, and Rimas suspected it was Narumi. Gentlemen. Both men turned to see an Anbu standing behind them. Yes? Kakashi inquired. If you wouldn't mind. Could you offer your assistance? The council and Hokage has asked for Lady Narumi's presence, and I don't wish for a confrontation. The Anbu inquired, both men could tell he was uneasy with the prospect of approaching Narumi. Okay. Just follow my lead, and if she gets violent back down immediately. Kakashi ordered, as he let out a sigh. Care to join us? He asked Rimas. Sure. Rimas accepted as the three walked out into the windy field to speak to Narumi. Narumi? Kakashi stated as they approached. Yes? Narumi asked in a calm voice. The council wishes to speak with you. Could you come with us, please? Kakashi asked kindly. Rimas and the Anbu both ready to run like hell if her reply was negative. Narumi let out an audible sigh before standing and glancing at them, the Sharingan present in her eyes. Fine. Oh good. Well let's go. Kakashi stated with an eye smile. Hi Uncle Rimas. Narumi greeted him with a tired look. Hey kiddo. How are you doing? Rimas asked as she walked up to him. He offered her a hug, which she gladly accepted. I'm tired. I can't wait to leave this place. Narumi replied. I still can't believe that you're leaving. Kakashi muttered as the four walked back towards the village. Yeah. I'm sorry Kakashi, but I can't stay here. I keep waking up thinking I'm gonna see him again, that Shisui will come back from his mission today and we'll get to spend time together. It's happened 3 times already and each time I feel awful. It sucks too much. And I don't think I can spend very much longer here without doing something that will force my sperm donor to kill me. Narumi stated with a shake of her head, her words earning a nod of understanding from Kakashi. He could tell she was still struggling with Shisui's death. Hey. Language young lady. You are the leader of a very old house. The leader of the Uchiwa should not be so uncouth. Rimas chastised her, causing her to grin and giggle. Sorry Uncle Rimas. Narumi apologized. So any plans for where you're going? Rimas asked. First to the fire capital to meet with the goblins and get an idea of what the Uchiwa assets are. Then maybe go exploring until I'm 11. Narumi replied. 11? Kakashi stated curiously. Are you planning to enroll in a magical school? Rimas inquired. Yeah, not sure which. Maybe one of the ones in Europe. I hear they're the oldest. Narumi responded with a thoughtful look. Well, I personally know the headmaster of Hogwarts. That's where I went to school. I could put in a good word. Rimas offered. Maybe. Hogwarts headmaster is Dumbledore, right? He's been here a few times to talk to the fourth. He was always kind to me when we spoke. Narumi mused. He's a very kind man. Some call him the leader of the light. He led the fight against Voldemort in the last war. I'm sure he'd be happy to have you at Hogwarts. Rimas told her with a smile. We'll see. I'll have to get out there and find an area I like. Narumi replied. Well, you can always come with me if you like. Rimas offered. Yeah I could do that too. We'll see. Narumi added happily as they made their way to the council chambers. A couple of minutes passed by before Narumi and the others arrived at the Leaf Council chambers. On one side sat the civilians' leaders, there was about 30 of them. On the other side were the shinobi, also 30. Between the two sides sat the Hokage and the four elders. Homura, Udatane, Danzo, and Hiruzen. Narumi spotted the two Sanin Jiraiya and Tsunade standing on either side of Minato. Tsunade looked timid and didn't meet the girl's gaze, she was probably still reeling from losing so easily to the young Namikaze. Jiraiya however was studying her intently, she hadn't seen the man in over a year. He always came back for Naruko's birthday, but since she wasn't around for it this time she must have missed him. While Jiraiya did focus on Naruko he was never mean to Narumi and always brought her presents and stuff. She guessed that he had to leave before he could find her, which was why she hadn't seen him this year. Narumi also spotted Itachi sitting in the Uchiha clan seat, he was eyeing her intently, though he was being more inconspicuous about it than Jiraiya. The rest of the people present were either indifferent, angered, or afraid of her presence. Narumi also took note of a man with a fire symbol on his headband standing to the side. "So has my license arrived?" Narumi asked as she looked at the man. Hearing her speak the man nodded. "Yes my lady it has. I do however need you to pass the standardized application test. I need to make sure you have the abilities of a fire-sponsored Ronin," the man told her as he stepped forward. "Alright what do you need me to do?" Narumi asked. "Wait. Before you do that, we have something we need to discuss," Minato stated. "Of course my lord. Please be quick about it though. I do need to get back soon," the man said with a bow as he stepped back. "I already told you I didn't want to be a leaf ninja. So what's the point of me being here?" Narumi asked. "You will speak with respect to this council child." Udatane snapped at her, causing Tsunade to flinch as she felt her own voice echo through Udatane's. "Respect is earned. You have not," Narumi replied simply. "Do you know who you are talking to young lady?" A blonde-haired woman on the civilian side shouted at her. "Oh look a woman who doesn't know any better." Narumi parroted out with an amused look in her eyes, causing a few people to chuckle at her. "You brat." The woman shouted, but she was dropped instantly with killing intent from Minato. "Enough. I did not ask her here to insult her." Minato delivered a reprimand from one moronic blonde to another, the thought made Narumi snicker. "Why am I here?" Narumi asked. "You are here to be enrolled into the Shinobi Academy," Danzo informed her. "Ah hell no." Narumi growled at him. "You are still my child Narumi. I decide what is best for you. You are going to the Ninja Academy. You are coming home. And you are going to cease with this rebellious behavior," Minato told her with a stern look in his eyes. "Yes Narumi it's time to come home darling." Narumi heard her mother's voice. She glanced over to see her in the Namikaze clan seat since Minato couldn't hold it due to being Hokage. No," Narumi said again. "You have no choice girl," Danzo said with a smirk. "You are still too young to make choices for yourself, the daimyo agrees with us. You will join the academy and become a leaf ninja. And down the line, perhaps we will activate the Craw for you. You obviously appear to have a heightened version of the Sharingan, which I believe constitutes the law's activation." "No," Lily shouted at him. "I want my daughter back, but I am not letting you or anyone turn her into some sort of baby-making factory. We are not activating the Craw for my daughter Danzo. That is final," Minato said in a tone that allowed zero argument. "Very well Lord Hokage. Having her here will be enough," Danzo responded. The moment she heard Danzo's threat, Narumi felt her hackles rise. Even if her parents had shot it down, the idea of her being turned into a baby-making factory caused her blood to run cold. Her Sharingan began to blaze the moment the threat was made, and all of the shinobi felt themselves tense as they spotted its activation. Danzo stared back at her with cold, unsympathetic eyes. His gaze was chilling as Narumi glared right at him. Slowly, her lips began to pull back as a snarl spread across her face, her aura darkened immensely, and those that could actually sense her chakra found themselves sweating at the unnatural malevolence of her energy. It was a darkness that few recognized or understood. While Danzo remained completely impassive, his gaze never left her as she glared at him. Minato observed the interaction with concern. Narumi's visage was entirely unlike that of a child's. She appeared like a predator, like a beast starved for blood. The tension in the room was palpable, if something didn't break it soon, Narumi would almost certainly do something foolish. Minato was about to speak when suddenly Narumi broke the silence. "You?" Narumi stated pointing at the fire Jonin. "Yes?" he asked. "Send a message to Gringotts in the fire capital. Tell them to send out one of their goblins with an inheritance test. I will prove to these people that I am the leader of a family. And then I'm going to kick the shit out of him," she said pointing at Itachi, "to get its independence, then I'm leaving the land of fire. Tell the fire daimyo that he will be losing the Uchiha family." "We already told you. You aren't going anywhere," Homura stated in a matter-of-fact voice. "Actually, she claims to be the ruler of a family. That means that she has a right to prove it." This supersedes leaf jurisdiction. You have no say in this matter. I will get a representative from Gringotts here to prove the validity of her claim. If she is in fact the ruler of a family, that makes her emancipated. Which in turn means the one and only claim to her, as her parents, is null and void. The Fire Jonin stated as he wrote on a scroll and then summoned a hawk and sent it out the window. This cannot be allowed. This girl is leaf property. Danzo bid out. I told you. You have no say. The only ones here who have any control over her since she is a civilian is her parents, and if she is the ruler of a family, then she is emancipated, which means they have no say over her. And if she wants to take her family and leave, she can freely handle that within the boundaries of the Uchiha clan and its oaths. Oaths made by the Uchiha clan specifically only hold weight to the parts of the clan that claim themselves a part of the Uchiha. If she chooses to separate the Uchiha from the Uchiha, then that matter must be settled within the confines of the clan itself. If they do separate, that also separates the Uchiha from all oaths, alliances, and agreement made by the Uchiha, which includes oaths of loyalty, service or protection, made by or for them. And because it is a clan affair, you also have no say in it. If this girl is telling the truth and is in fact the ruler of the Uchiha family, then the daimyo is going to be very upset. The Uchiha are a most ancient and most noble family. To have their status reactivated and then taken from the land of fire. That does not bode well for the leaf. The Fire Jonin explained. Many in the room began to shift uncomfortably. To anger the daimyo was never a good idea, and he would be even more pissed since they already went to him to assure their rights over the girl. Narumi, please. We want you to come home. We're sorry for what happened. Lily told the girl. Save it. I'm done with this village and its shit. You best hope I'm right. 'Cause if I'm not, I'm still leaving, it's just going to be a lot messier. Narumi said as her manjiku appeared in her eyes and began to spin menacingly. We'll have word tomorrow. I must have this matter come to a close for today until the goblin representative arrives. The Fire Jonin informed everyone, since he knew anything further that any parties tried to do might be illegal. He is right, Minato. This meeting is finished. Hiruzen whispered as he took a drag from his pipe. Minato stared at his eldest daughter caught between anger and sadness. Well, unless there's anything else, bye. Narumi said with a smile as she sunshined away. Later. Narumi was walking through the village with a bored look on her face. She didn't really have a destination. She was just going wherever her feet took her. You know you're a bitch. She heard someone say. Narumi turned and saw her one and only sister standing to the side, with two girls on either side of her, one was a Yamanaka and the other had bright pink hair. I'm sorry, did you say something? Narumi muttered, mimicking Kakashi as she picked at her ear. I said that you're a bitch. Naruko growled as she took a threatening step forward. At 8, Naruko was a spitting image of Minato. Besides the 3 whisker marks on either side of her face, she could pass for a younger female version of him. She was Narumi's exact opposite. Loud, brash, brightly colored, above average intellect, a genius when it came to magic and ninjutsu, but nowhere near Narumi's level. Her bright blonde hair was tied into 2 ponytails, like tsunade's that hung down to her lower back. Ah, that's what I thought you said. Now let me rebuke your statement with an intelligent one. You're a jackass. Narumi fired back. You know nothing about me. I'm going to be the most powerful ninja in the village. So, you'd best be careful, 'cause I might surprise you one day. Naruko challenged her sister. You know what? Surprise me now. Narumi ordered. What? Naruko chirped with a look of surprise. Yeah, surprise me, say something intelligent. Narumi said with a smirk. You're just angry that mom and dad love me more. You know they never wanted you. I was always the favorite. Naruko shot at her, aiming to rile Narumi up. Narumi, however, was used to this argument. She had it a million times before, and whenever Narumi managed to actually hurt Naruko's feelings, she would run off to cry to Minato and Lily, and Narumi would be the one to get in trouble for it. Even if she didn't start the argument. You know you're right. Narumi said with a smile. What? Naruko asked, taken aback by this turn. Yeah, you always were the favorite. I'm sure Minato and Lily would have been happy with just you. After all, you're the girl who lived. I just hope Voldemort is really dead, otherwise, he'll be coming back for you. Narumi told her with a wicked grin. She watched all 3 girls seize up at the thought of that monster coming back. So what? If he comes back, I'll just beat him again. Naruko tried to sound brave, but the stuttering made her fail in the attempt. Oh yeah? How? Narumi asked with a smirk. Well, I'll just use my awesome ninjutsu. Naruko told her sister. Oh really? Which one? Narumi asked again, her smirk growing bigger. HMPH, I don't need to tell you. I hope you do leave, that way mom and dad don't have to think about you anymore. Naruko shouted at her before turning with her 2 friends to leave. I'm already planning on it, dear sister. Hopefully we won't meet again. Narumi said with a cruel smirk, causing Naruko to stop in her tracks to contemplate that statement. She was about to turn around to say something, but Narumi had already vanished. Naruko stared at where she had been for several moments, the idea of never seeing her sister again, filling her with sadness. A few seconds passed before she shook her head and stormed off. She knew full well that Narumi wasn't going anywhere. Her parents would fix this and force her to come home, and they could be a family again, and Narumi could stop with this rebellious streak. The next day. Narumi stood in the council room. The goblin representative had arrived by portkey. He stood in the center of the room eyeing the council wearily. Most held neutral looks, but some had sneers on their faces. "Okay, let's do this," Narumi said. "Yes, let's get this over with." The goblin agreed as he pulled out a bowl and a small knife. "Cut your hand and let the blood fall into the bowl." The goblin, whose name was Gnarltooth, ordered her. "Are you sure you wish?" Minato began but was cut off by the goblin's glare. "Please be silent, Lord Hokage. The only reason this inheritance test is taking place in public is to confirm her validity to the claim of the Uchiha. That is the only reason you are seeing it, anything else that comes from this test is confidential, so be silent." The goblin snapped. Causing a few ninja to glare, but Minato simply nodded knowing it was better to not pick a fight with a Gringotts goblin. Narumi cut her hand and let her blood fall into the bowl. After it was sufficiently full, she felt magic from the knife heal her hand. She offered a polite smile as she passed the knife back to the goblin, whom took it and placed it back in his bag. A few quiet moments went by before Gnarltooth pulled out a piece of paper and dipped it into the bowl. The paper drank all of her blood, absorbing it. A few moments later, black letters began to appear on the paper. "Itachi Uchiha, please confirm what this says as head of her clan," Gnarltooth ordered. Itachi quickly went to the goblin and read over the test. Name: Narumi Namikaze Slytherin Uchiha. Sex: female. Titles: Uchiha clan head by magical passing, paternal. Slytherin by conquest. Heir of Namikaze, paternal. Uzumaki, paternal. Uchiha third in line, paternal. Ravenclaw, maternal. Black, godfather. Senju, unverified. Itachi read the whole thing to the people of the room. Narumi had to smirk at the Slytherin by conquest part. She knew how she earned that title. Though it didn't surprise her that none of the people present had realized the truth. In fact, she only knew Voldemort was the Slytherin Lord because he was currently the only person in the world she had killed. She knew that the Dark Lord did many things in the name of Salazar Slytherin, but she had no clue if he ever told people he was actually related to the man. It did surprise her that her mother was a descendant of Rowena Ravenclaw though. Especially considering her mother was a Gryffindor. She also was curious about Black. She knew her godfather was Sirius Black, but she thought he was in Azkaban. Apparently it was determined that he fed information to Kumo Ninja during the Third Great Ninja War that led to the death of Obito. Of course, they knew Obito was alive now, but that didn't change the fact that at the time Minato and Lily were on the warpath, both planning to kill Sirius for what he'd done to Minato. Apparently, Sirius had been caught shortly after he killed a bunch of civilians in London, along with another of Lily's friends, Peter Pettigrew. To stop Minato from tearing the country apart, the ministry in Britain tossed Sirius into prison and threw away the key. The other curious one was the Senju, but Madara whispered in her mind that the Uzumaki were distantly related to the Senju and that his wife, her grandmother, was in Uzumaki. Awesome, so Itachi duel now or tomorrow? Narumi asked with a mad glint in her eyes. I'm afraid I'll have to decline. I feel there is no need for a duel and allow the head of the Uchiha clan to leave, with my blessing. Itachi informed Narumi as he handed her inheritance test to the goblin. Really? Narumi asked. Yes. I won't force you to remain in this village. Know that even though you may hate me, I still can't help but think of you as a friend. You and the Uchiha are free to leave. And you go with my blessing. Itachi told her with a smile. Thanks Itachi. This means a lot to me. You're not there yet. But maybe one day, I can call you friend again. Narumi told him, offering her own smile. How can this be? Shouldn't Minato be the next leader to the Uchiha, and how in the hell is this girl the head of Slytherin? Tsunade asked. Obviously she killed the last lord of Slytherin house. And she was chosen by the previous lord of the Uchiha. It doesn't matter if her father came first, just like he may choose her little sister to take the role of leader of the Namikaze, so can his father choose her, and he did. Now that this is settled, is there anything else? Gnarltooth asked. Yes, could you please do an audit of the Uchiha estate? Find out all I own. And could the goblins prepare me a portkey out of the Land of Fire to somewhere in Europe when they get a chance? Narumi asked. Of course, we'll have it done by the time you arrive in the capital, Lady Narumi. Gnarltooth said with a nod. Good. Can we go to one of the training fields so I can take my Ronin test? Narumi asked the Fire Jonin. Of course, my lady. The Fire Jonin said with a bow. Well, all I can say is later bitches. Narumi said to the council as she shunshined away. All the council could do was keep replaying the names of all those titles that Narumi possessed. The daimyo was going to have them all killed. To be continued. Chapter 5. Departure. Narumi sat on top of her apartment building humming to herself. She was set to leave the village the following day and she couldn't be happier. The fire jonin who tested her abilities said that she had what it takes to become a jonin and placed her in the running for rapid promotion. She could pick up her full license at the fire capital when she got there. Her Ronin license would definitely be Chunin level, but if things worked out well, then she may get a Jonin level license instead. A Ronin license basically makes a person a ninja and allows them to take missions in any country. Depending on your rank, determines the level of missions you could take. Narumi blew away the fire jonin in every task he set for her, including ninjutsu, taijutsu and jinjutsu tests, along with throwing accuracy and other skills. With all her abilities, Narumi was more than capable of becoming a jonin. It was just unusual for someone to jump into being a ronin and instantly be jonin level. There was a lot of paperwork involved, so she may or may not get that level. She was going to leave with Uncle Remus. They would head to the fire capital, get her license, head to the Gringotts there, check on her assets, and then head for someplace else. Narumi didn't care where, she still had 3 years until she was old enough to become a student at one of the wizarding schools, so it was a good time for some adventuring. The village was in quite a state right now. Apparently the Leaf Council had sent a message to Gringotts to inquire as to the identity of the previous head of Slytherin House. Lily had asked for a blood reading from Gringotts since she had no clue that she was Ravenclaw's heir. And the council had already sent 2 ninja to try to bribe her to stay. One was actually pretty amusing to her. One of the ninja they sent was their best hostage negotiator, who apparently had a perfect record. Narumi remembered spending nearly an hour denying all of the man's offers. The guy was so full of himself and so proud of his perfect record in negotiations that a refusal was causing him to have an anxiety attack. "Please just tell me what you want." She remembered him begging. "We'll give you anything. Jutsu. Money. Men. Women." He finished giving her a look. Her reply was to kangaroo kick him 30 yards down the street. So yeah, things were a bit hectic. Narumi lost her smile as she felt 3 presences appear behind her. "Can I help you, Lord Third?" Narumi asked as she turned around and spotted Hiruzen, Jiraiya and Tsunade. "I'm just here to make sure they don't do something stupid. I didn't want to disturb you." Hiruzen replied, giving both of his students a look. "Hey brat. How have you been?" Jiraiya asked after a moment. "Busy. Best friend died. Unlocked a legendary hidden jutsu. Oh, and apparently, I'm head of Slytherin House, so yeah. Also, busy getting ready to move to a new country and go on adventures, so I've had a lot on my plate recently." Narumi replied, eyeing the 2 Sannin curiously. "Listen, we're here to try and talk you out of leaving." Jiraiya began. "Do you realize what you are putting your parents through? Lily still hasn't stopped bawling her eyes out because of you." Tsunade interrupted. "You know, I don't think I ever asked you what your deal with me was. I mean, my mother's an idiot, my father is a jackass, and my sister is probably the best example of why you shouldn't smoke and drink while pregnant. But I never did find out why you hate me so much." Narumi asked. "It's because I'm an Uchiwa, isn't it?" "What? No." Tsunade looked a little surprised at being called out like that. "It is, isn't it? You've had this unnatural hatred for me since I was born and it's because I'm an Uchiwa." "I knew it." Narumi replied with a chuckle. "But that has nothing to do with why I don't like you." Tsunade replied. "A racist." Narumi muttered, earning her a glare from Tsunade. "I don't hate you, Narumi. And the reason I don't like you has nothing to do with you being an Uchiwa, I just learned about that like everybody else." Tsunade explained, trying not to explode and get attacked again. "Then why?" "I know why he doesn't like me. It's because he doesn't really know me," Narumi stated as she pointed at Jiraiya. "Hey, I don't have any problem with you," Jiraiya began, but Narumi cut him off. "I didn't say you did. But you don't like me. Not like you like Naruto. Or Minato, or Lily, or Tsunade, or Kakashi. I could go on. You treat me like a friend's child is supposed to be treated. I'm not your godchild, therefore you don't need to have a close bond with me. I would have liked to, but I don't hate you for not having one with me. She's my godmother though, and she hates me," Narumi explained to Jiraiya. She could tell her explanation got to him as a look of shame took up residence on his face. Jiraiya really did wish he got to know Narumi better. Especially after all he had learned about her recently. He could tell she had grown into a mature and dynamic individual, and it saddened him that even after all these years, he hadn't formed any sort of bond with Minato's eldest. "I told you. I don't hate you, Narumi," Tsunade said again. "Well, it feels like you do," Narumi told her. "I'm sorry, Narumi, I don't have any family. Minato, Lily, Sensei, even this fool Jiraiya, they're all I have. I guess I just chose to follow what Minato and Lily did. I guess I never took the chance to get to know you either. I just assumed that Naruto knew you best, and when she spoke, I thought it was the truth. I also wanted to apologize for trying to hit you before it was stupid, and I guess I just let my emotions get to me. Sometimes my family is all I have, I don't take kindly to people insulting them. So, I'm sorry. Tsunade offered up her apology, actually sounding like she meant it. I guess I'll take what I can get from you people. Whatever, apology accepted, now let's move on to why you're here. You want to try and talk me out of leaving? I gotta hear the argument you prepared for this. Narumi stated with a chuckle. Both Sanin shared a look with each other before beginning. Look kid, it's a tough world out there, Jiraiya began, but a chuckle from Narumi cut him off. It's a tough world in here too. At least out there no one knows who I am. And I don't look a thing like the fourth, so you can't say people will recognize me, plus I'm already planning on dropping his last name. Narumi told them. You're disowning yourself? Jiraiya asked in shock. Tsunade and Hiruzen both had similar looks of surprise. Sure. Why not? My father already said that he wanted Naruto to become Namika's clan leader, anyway. I'm just making it easier on him. Plus, it wouldn't do to have a clan leader who isn't even a part of the village now, would it? Narumi stated with a knowing smirk. Both Sanin mentally cursed, that had been one of their attempts to get her to stay, since she couldn't be Namika's clan leader if she wasn't in the village. Next. Narumi asked with a smirk. Nothing we say is going to convince you to stay, is it? Jiraiya asked, sensing that they would get nowhere. Nope. You could tell me that if I stay, I'll be made Hokage and I'd still tell you to ram it up your rear. Narumi replied joyfully. Is there anything we can do to get you to stay? Tsunade asked. No. I've been in this shithole for too long. You stay and enjoy your happy lives here. I'm not going to stay just so I can deal with more of this village's bigotry and hypocrisy. Narumi told the two with a solemn look. You are an amazing young lady, Narumi. I'm sure if Madara were still alive he would be proud of the person you have become. This situation, your treatment in the leaf. You are handling it very maturely. A lesser person would have done something foolish. Hiruzen complimented her. Thank you, Lord Third. I plan on riding Kakashi and the Ichirakus. If you ever feel like talking, you can send me a letter. Narumi offered. I would like that. Hiruzen stated with a smile. You two can send me letters as well. Can't say whether I'll read them or not, I guess it would depend on my mood. But you can still write. Narumi informed the two Sanin with a smile. Both shared a look, knowing that that was probably the best they could hope for. Where will you go? Jiraiya asked. I don't know. I want to attend one of the magical schools in Europe, but I still have a few years of free time until then. Maybe I'll do some adventuring with Uncle Remus, see what kind of trouble we can get into before I'm old enough to go to school. Narumi replied with a thoughtful look. Well, you keep in contact, okay kid? And let me know what kind of adventures you get up to. Jiraiya told her. Sure. Narumi replied with a smile. Just stay safe. I know you don't believe me, but your parents really do worry about you. Tsunade said with a sad look. Narumi stared at her for a second before sighing and giving a slight nod to show she understood. The next day. Narumi and Remus stood at the gate of the village. Both were just about to leave. A few people had stopped by to say their goodbyes. The Ichirakus had come to offer their farewells and even brought a nice supply of their own brand of instant ramen for Narumi to try. Kakashi was there too. You stay safe alright kiddo and keep in touch. Kakashi told her as the two shared a hug. I will Kakashi. Narumi replied with a smile. Oh, and this is for you. I planned on teaching it to you when you were older, but I have no clue when we'll see each other again. Now I want you to promise me you will only use this technique if your life depends on it. Kakashi told the girl as he handed her a scroll. Sensing what technique Kakashi had given her, Narumi nodded. But girl. Kakashi said with an eye smile as he patted her head. I had hoped to catch you before you left. A voice stated. Narumi turned to see Itachi had arrived. Itachi? What are you doing here? Narumi asked. Just wanted to say my goodbyes and give you something. Itachi replied as he fished a scroll out of his pocket and gave it to her. What is this? Narumi asked as he handed her the scroll. A gift from Shisui. He gave it to me before he died. I think he wanted you to have it. Itachi replied, offering her a warm smile. Narumi stared at the scroll for a moment before nodding and offering her hand to Itachi. For what it's worth, Itachi, I hope we meet again. Narumi stated as Itachi shook her hand. As do I. You keep that safe alright and use it wisely, or at least better than Shisui would. He could be so troublesome sometimes. Itachi told her with a smile, which quickly changed to an unamused look as he recalled Shisui's antics. Ah, I will. Thank you. Narumi replied as she pocketed the scroll. Narumi. Narumi heard her name called, she turned and spotted her whole family, plus the Sanin, standing nearby. Narumi stared at them all with an expressionless face. "We just wanted to say goodbye," Minato stated with obvious sadness. "I see. Goodbye then," Narumi stated curtly. At her words, her mother started to tear up, and at the sight of her mother's tears, Naruko became angry. "Why, Narumi? Why can't we just go home and start over? Why do you have to leave? Don't you know how much this hurts?" Lily cried as Minato wrapped an arm around her. "Why? Why you ask? Maybe I should ask how much fun all those little family outings were without me. Maybe I should ask how nice it was for the three of you to sleep in warm comfy beds while I slept outside in the cold. Maybe I should ask how those meals tasted without having to make any for me." Narumi replied, her voice steadily rising. "Maybe I should ask when the four of us became the three of you," Narumi finished in a low cold tone. Her statement shocked both of her parents. Neither had thought their treatment of her was anything that bad, in fact both had assumed the reason for her leaving was the argument of her wall-walking escapade. Neither had thought that a real reason for leaving was neglect on their part. It brought tears to their eyes as they remembered some of those times that she mentioned. "Oh, you see what you do. Why do you have to make mom and dad cry, huh? You know what? Just go if things are so bad here, none of us want you here," Naruko shouted at her, with tears in her eyes. Both of her parents and the Sannin seemed surprised by her words. Kakashi meanwhile let out a sigh, as did Rimas, both having seen and acknowledged this part of Naruko's behavior before. Narumi stared at her twin with a blank expression for a few moments before nodding and turning to leave. Rimas watched Naruko's eyes tear up even more as she watched her sister walk away. All Rimas could do was sigh. Naruko was just too damn proud and stubborn to admit that it tore her apart that her sister was leaving. If Naruko had ever bothered to treat her sister with kindness or respect, then maybe Narumi would have actually taken notice of the tears streaming down her little sister's face. Rimas sighed once again and turned to leave when he heard someone say his name. He glanced back and locked eyes with Minato. "You take care of her, Rimas, that's our little girl, you take good care of her," Minato ordered, tears falling from his eyes as he did. Rimas could only nod as he watched his old friends finally come to realize just what they had done to push their daughter away. It filled him with a bit of hope that they would finally try to make amends. "Right when you can, Rimas, and keep her safe," Lily called after him. Rimas offered a wave to say that he understood her. "So how are you feeling?" Rimas asked after a few moments of walking in silence. "Liberated," Narumi replied with a smile. "Well, it'll take us 2 days' walk to get to the capital. The porky the goblins are making for us, where does it lead?" Rimas asked. "Germany. It was the farthest into Europe they could go from here," Narumi replied. "Germany, huh? There's plenty of things to do there," Rimas noted. "Yeah, do you think I can finally get a wand?" Narumi asked with a bit of excitement. "I'm sure we can find a wandcrafter for you. They aren't cheap though. I'm sure someone like you is going to need a custom wand," Rimas told her. "No problem," Narumi said with a smile as the two continued their chat as they made their way to the fire capital. Later that night, Narumi and Rimas lay sleeping under the stars in one of the many fields dotting the countryside. Rimas had brought a tent, but it was a beautiful night out. So, they decided to sleep under the stars. Narumi was suddenly awoken by feedback from one of her clones popping. 20 individuals were rushing towards them at top speed. "Rimas," she hissed as she shot to her feet. Rimas shot awake just as 20 figures burst from the forest heading straight at them. "Those look like leaf anbu," Rimas stated. "Fuck." Narumi hissed as she saw the front 5 anbu whip their arms back and launch a barrage of shuriken at them. Narumi quickly sped through hand signs and slammed her palms into the ground. A wall of earth rose up and shielded the two from the shuriken. After a moment, the wall exploded as 2 of the anbu punched through it and dove at the 2 of them. Rimas already had his wand out and with a single motion, he banished one of the anbu back into the others. The one that jumped at Narumi was also stopped when Narumi raised her hand and a red light shot from it. Rimas recognized the spell as Reducto. The end result for the anbu was not pleasant, he split into pieces as most of his torso exploded, showering poor Narumi in blood. She visibly flinched from the end result of her spell as she had reacted on instinct. It took only a moment for her to recover as her eyes suddenly turned red with the Sharingan and she shot over to Rimas so she could watch his back. Another anbu came at her, she drew her tanto to block his strike and quickly delivered a chakra-enhanced strike to his chest. She could clearly hear bones snap as he was pushed back. Narumi knew that in a moment more anbu would be on them, she had to think fast. "Do you have a broom?" Narumi asked Rimas, quickly coming up with a plan. "Yes." Rimas replied as he conjured one. "Fly," Narumi ordered as she started to flash through hand signs. Rimas didn't think to argue with the prodigy as he hopped onto the broom and flew straight into the air. Just as he did, more anbu passed by the broken wall. Just as they appeared, Narumi jumped high into the air, well over 100 feet. She looked down and shouted, "Fire style. Great fire annihilation." Suddenly with a great breath she spit out a huge wall of fire down onto the field. Remus watched as the Anbu scattered to try and escape the flames. Some did, but not many. Narumi hung in the air for a few moments as she finished breathing out the flames. Though gravity quickly overpowered magic and she was pulled down towards the inferno. Remus however was on her in flash, he caught her as she fell. "Holy shit. Thanks, Remus." Narumi stated breathlessly as she glanced down at the inferno. "No, thank you. Where the hell did you learn something like that?" Remus asked with shock. "My grandfather taught it to me." Narumi replied, eyeing the inferno. Remus was about to question her about that when the front of his broom was sheared off. He had just enough time to catch the glint of a windmill shuriken as it flew off into the night. The two spiraled down to the ground. Remus was able to slow their descent partly, but not enough to avoid injury. Both were thrown when they hit the ground, and Narumi was sure she dislocated her shoulder with how she landed. "You're coming with us," a dead emotionless voice stated. Narumi glanced up and saw 5 of the Anbu staring down at her. She quickly took note that all of their masks were blank and featureless. "Come and try, suckers." Narumi hissed as her Manjikyu spun to life and she cast a Materasu on the one who spoke. The man had no time to dodge as his whole body burst into black flames. He screamed in agony as the other Anbu jumped back to avoid a follow-up attack. She saw one Anbu start to go through some hand signs, but he was cut off by a blade the size of a bus, shearing the fool in half. "Seems you're in a bit of a bind there, brat," came a familiar voice. Narumi was greeted to the side of a massive red toad with a pipe in its mouth, and standing atop it was none other than Jiraiya. Well. What do we have here, Bunta?" Jiraiya stated. "Looks like a bunch of punks trying to pick on a little girl." The massive toad replied as it took a drag from its pipe. "Well, you know what we do to punks who pick on children," Jiraiya stated with a murderous glint in his eyes. The toad nodded and withdrew its blade from the ground. Chunks of dead Anbu were stuck to the sword as the great toad hefted its massive blade into the air. The Anbu immediately scattered. One wasn't fast enough and was bisected by the toad's blade, and the other 2 were hit by 2 mud dragons Jiraiya had summoned to deal with them. "Hey kid, you okay?" Jiraiya asked as he hopped down to Narumi. "Yeah, Uncle Remus. We need to find Uncle Remus." Normie stated in a bit of panic as she glanced around for her companion. "I'm alright, Narumi," came Remus's voice. Narumi glanced over to see 2 Anbu, one with a weasel mask and another with a dog mask, walking with Remus over to her. It looked like he had hurt his leg during their nasty crash landing with the way he was limping, but he otherwise seemed unharmed. "Thank goodness," Narumi said with a sigh of relief. "Who were these guys?" she asked after a moment. "No clue. But they aren't Leaf Anbu. Your old man sent us to keep an eye on you two until you made it to the capital. He figured something like this would happen," Jiraiya replied. "Whomever these men were, I think they belonged to the same faction that attacked Shisui," Weasel stated. "You don't think?" Dog began. "I do," Jiraiya answered his unfinished question. "What do we do?" Weasel asked Jiraiya. "You two get them to the capital, I'll stay here and clean this mess up. With a little bit of luck, we'll finally have the proof we need to take that bastard down," Jiraiya ordered as he made his way to one of the corpses. "Thanks, you guys, for coming to help." Narumi thanked them. "No problem. What are friends for?" Dog replied happily. "You never change, Kakashi," Narumi said with a chuckle as she wrenched her arm back into place and let out a hiss of pain. "You gonna be alright, uncle?" Narumi asked. "Yes, let's hurry to the capital though. I'll feel safer once we're gone," Remus replied. The next day. The 4 of them had arrived in the capital around noon. They quickly made their way to the Ronin registration office for Narumi to pick up her license. After consideration they decided that they would give her an upgrading license. She was Shunin rank now but would become a Jonin in 2 years' time. Narumi was happy with that and the 4 headed to Gringotts. "Well. It looks like we're here," Dog stated. "Time to part ways," Weasel added. "Thank you both. I hope you two right," Narumi said with a smile. "We will. You just stay safe," Weasel replied. "Yeah, now before we part ways. I have something I'm supposed to give you. They say they know it won't make up for everything, but they both wanted you to have these," Dog stated as he pulled out a book and a scroll. Narumi instantly recognized her mother's old charms book from her 5th year. Lily always said that that was her favorite. The scroll turned out to be instructions for her father's Rasengan. "Now I know how you feel, but you shouldn't waste such gifts even if you don't like where they came from," Dog added, hoping she'd keep them. "I tell them thanks, okay," Narumi stated after a moment as she packed away the book and scroll. "Alright, well, we'll head back. You guys finish your business and get away from this place. And also, don't place your location in any letters you send this way." "Alright," Dog told her. "Got it," Narumi said with a smile as she and Remus turned and headed into the Gringotts. Ready for their next big adventure. To be continued. Chapter 6. It's about time. Narumi was staring out her window, looking out at the city of Berlin. Remus and she had just arrived a day ago and quickly found a nice hotel to stay at. Narumi was still giddy from all the changes that had occurred in the last day. She was now rich, as it turned out that a lot of the Uchiwa assets were tied into the Land of Lightning, which is where they hailed from, so Narumi had the goblins go and clean out all of her properties and then sell the estates to the Land of Lightning. Lucky for the Uchiwa only claimed about 15% of their assets, which was still a decent chunk of change. And Narumi also had access to the Slytherin funds, all she had to do was get into contact with the Gringotts branch in Britain to transfer over the funds. Turns out with all of the monies combined, she had roughly 95 million galleons worth of funds, at least according to Remus. Narumi was surprised when they got to Berlin and she spotted a globe. She immediately tried to find the elemental nations on it, but to no avail. Sensing her question, Remus told her that a lot like Avalon, the elemental nations had been hidden with magic. When asked how, Remus said that no one knows for sure, but that the shinobi claim it was the Sage of Six Paths that had done it. Now only magical beings could locate either place, though the elemental nations were a lot easier to find than Avalon, since no one had seen that place since the time of Merlin and King Arthur. According to Remus, the elemental nations actually sat off the coast of China and that the only way to find it was to take a hidden path in Japan that led there. The path wasn't so hidden that magicals had a hard time finding it, but muggles did. They would never be able to locate the entrance no matter what they did. Another huge change was when Narumi dropped her Namika's name, she also chose to take a new one. She wanted to keep hold of her old one so as not to forget who she was, but for all intents and purposes she was a new person. So, after spending for freaking ever trying to come up with a new name, Remus decided for her. Flashback. Ah. Why is this so fucking hard? Narumi whined as she tried to think of a name she liked. Not as easy as you thought it would be, is it? Remus asked with an amused chuckle. Well, I'm not hearing you offer any suggestions. Narumi fired back at him. Alright, how about Riley? Remus asked. Riley? You want to name me after Am's dog? Narumi replied. Well, actually, the name is of Irish origin, it can mean either Rye clearing or courageous. If you recall, I'm the one who suggested it to Am in the first place. So why not? It's simple, easy to remember, it's unisex so people won't think it's girly. I don't see what the problem is. Remus argued. I'm courageous. Riley Narumi Uchiwa Slytherin. You know what? I like it. I'll go with Riley. The newly christened Riley said with a smile. Can we proceed? The goblin sitting across from asked in an annoyed voice. Both Remus and Riley adopted sheepish looks as they both realized where they were having this long-winded conversation. Then flashback, from this point on Narumi will be referred to as Riley, which will serve as her name for most of the story. Riley smiled as she thought of her new name, her new beginning. Remus had questioned her about the name change beforehand. He wanted to know why she wanted to erase her past. Her reply was that she didn't, she still kept the name Narumi, it just wasn't her first any longer. Plus, Riley argued that Narumi was the daughter of the fourth Hokage, she was the hated child of Konohagakure. Riley was no one. Riley could become anything. She was a blank slate and that's what she wanted to be, it's why she left in the first place. Yeah, she wanted to escape her neglect, but she also wanted to start anew and make a name for herself without the negative aspects of the past. Now she was Riley Narumi Slytherin Uchiwa, head of the most ancient and most noble houses of Slytherin and Uchiwa. And that's it. From there she could go anywhere and do anything. So any plans on what you want to do first? She heard Remus ask from behind her. I'm not sure. Maybe we should just explore and see where our feet take us. Riley replied. Sounds good to me. Remus replied after a moment of thought. And with that the two went out to explore Berlin and the surrounding areas. To Riley, this was the life, out in the world, free to do as you please. 1 week later. Now I need you to stay here for the night, alright? It's important that you stay indoors, okay? Remus told Riley. Remus, quit acting like aliens are invading. And stop pretending I don't know where you're going. I've known you were a werewolf since I was 6. Riley told him. Remus let out an audible sigh before giving her a look. Fine, I promise I'll stay indoors. Riley relented. Good. I left food in the fridge for you. I should be back tomorrow night. Stay safe, alright? Remus told her as he got up to leave. Yeah. Riley waved him off as she turned her attention to the TV. She had quickly become addicted to the thing. There were TVs back in the elemental nations, but the only things on them was the news. This TV had so many different movies and TV shows, it was awesome. Have fun, kiddo. Remus said with a smirk as he exited. 4 hours later. Riley was awoken by a loud howl in the distance. She walked over to the window and glanced out. She was greeted by the sight of trees, as far as she could see. Her and Remus had left Berlin a day or two ago to get to non-populated areas, so Remus wouldn't be a danger to anyone. Now Riley was stuck in a crappy motel, just waiting for the day to end. I have zero clue what he is so worried about. I mean, it's not like even in wolf form he could take me. Riley told herself as she continued to scan the forest. A moment passed before her eyes caught movement. She spotted someone running towards the motel. She activated her Sharingan to give her a better look. With a clearer picture she saw that the person was a man, and he looked like some sort of hiker or like a backpacker. She wondered for a moment what the hell he was running from when she suddenly heard another howl. This one was louder, and it caused the man to turn and look back into the darkness of the forest as he ran. Riley glanced into the forest and had to curse at what she saw. There, chasing the man down, was some sort of long-limbed wolf-like creature. Damn it, Remus, what the hell? I thought you were locking yourself in a hole in the ground or something. Riley growled out as she threw open the window and hopped out. Idiot must have accidentally stumbled onto poor Remus while he was busy dealing with Mooney. Madara commented. Probably. Well, can't let the idiot get mauled. Remus would have a fit. Riley thought in reply. Run, kid. The man shouted as he spotted her. Riley ignored him as she locked eyes with Mooney. The man came to a sudden halt when he spotted Riley's blood-red eyes, which were glowing in the darkness. Poor man must have thought he had run into a goddamn vampire too. Mooney closed in but slowed as he spotted Riley. Run, you idiot. Riley ordered the man as she locked eyes with Mooney. Mooney watched the man scamper away, but a sharp whistle from Riley drew his attention back to her. Did that idiot let you out, Mooney? You know you're supposed to stay indoors when you're like this. Riley stated. Mooney let out a few light growls before whimpering a few times. The werewolf obviously realized it was in the presence of a very powerful magical. Mooney remained low to the ground, doing everything to avoid appearing like he was challenging the new alpha. You know, I'm not quite sure what Uncle Remus was so worried about. Riley stated as she stepped closer to the submissive werewolf. You weren't that bad. Riley said with a tilt of her head. Sadly, Mooney spotted the movement and saw that her throat was vulnerable. The wolf growled and lunged teeth first at the small girl, though instead of tasting warm blood as the wolf had expected it found a crushing pain in its throat. Ah, Mooney, Remus wouldn't like it if you tried to eat me. Riley chided the wolf with a grin as she held the large animal by its throat. Riley may not have improved her physical strength that much, but she had improved her use of Tsunade's super strength technique. She could now multiply her strength 10 times. Now werewolf has low Jonin level strength. Riley had high Genin level strength, multiplied by 10 times, left her with high Chunin strength. So, while she was still at a disadvantage in strength, she was holding Mooney by the throat. That tended to make a creature submissive. Mooney let out a few whines as he tried to pull away from her, but the pressure on his throat was too great, so instead he let his body go limp, a sign of submission. After a moment Riley threw Mooney back a few yards. The wolf growled and shook off its throat injury. Now why don't we go somewhere else and have some fun, eh, Mooney? Let's go for a run. Riley suggested as she took off. The wolf perked its ears at her idea before chasing after her. Later. Remus awoke on the soft grass with quite possibly the worst headache he had ever had. He glanced around and to his horror found he wasn't still in the shed he had chained himself in yesterday. He was sitting in some tiny divot at the base of a tree. Feeling alright there, Remus? He heard a familiar voice say from above. Remus looked up to see Riley perched on a tree branch above him. Riley, how? Remus managed to say as he winced at the sunlight. Some asshole stumbled upon your hideout and threw the door open. I saved your wand. Riley replied as she tossed his wand and a wool cloak down to him. Remus graciously accepted both and transfigured the cloak into his normal outfit. I didn't. Remus asked as Riley hopped down from the tree. No, he's alive and so am I, Riley replied as she gave a little twirl to show that there wasn't even a scratch on her. Remus let out a sigh of relief at that. I'm glad I didn't hurt you. Remus stated after a moment. Hey, don't get so worked up, I'm fine, Mooney, and I just had a little run through the forest. I think we're in West Germany now though. Riley informed him. West Germany? How long were we running? Remus asked. I don't know. I think it was like 10 when we started and you changed back at around 4, so 6 hours. Riley replied. Remus simply shook his head in exasperation. So let's go see what kind of fun we can get into. Riley said with a smile as she turned and headed off. Remus just gave the girl an unamused look before following after her. -4-year time skip. 1 year passed. It had been over a year since Riley first went running with Mooney. Now she did it every time Remus turned. It helped to keep the wolf from hurting people, and Remus was starting to trust in Riley's abilities to keep him from harming anyone. So far there hadn't been a single incident. Riley could now multiply her strength by 20 times, which meant that she now possessed high Jonin levels of physical strength, which allowed her to physically overpower Mooney if she had to. Not to mention her speed was now on par with an elite Jonin as well. Her abilities continued to soar and she grew more powerful with each passing day. Remus had argued for waiting to get a wand, since if she learned all of her spells and wand movements now, she wouldn't have anything to do at school. Reluctantly she agreed. Remus still taught her spells, she just used them wandlessly. Riley was also hardcore into transfiguration now because she wanted to become an animagus. Remus had told her she needed a certain level of skill to be able to do it, so she now devoted all of her time to studying so she could eventually get Remus to teach her how to become one. Another interesting thing that occurred was that she stumbled upon her ability to use wood style. She had been practicing a water and earth combination technique when she botched it and it accidentally came out as wood style. Madara explained that Hashirama had given him some of his cells when he was dying in the Valley of the End in order to heal him. According to him, the story of his death at the valley was a lie told by Hashirama so that Madara could leave and live in peace. Yes, the two did have a legendary battle that created the valley itself, but it was not a battle to settle old grudges. The two just wanted to fight again, test themselves at their best, without an audience or spectators to judge the end result. They both fought at their best, and in the end Hashirama won. Apparently Madara had received the ability to use wood style after Hashirama's transfusion. And it seems he had passed that ability on to Riley. So naturally, Riley also worked a lot on that skill as well. She was now a Jonin level healer and her powers in ninjutsu were second to none. 9 years old and Riley was probably the strongest person for 1,000 miles in any direction. 1.5 years passed. Remus and Riley were now in France. The two were busy learning the language and getting to know the people. Riley had taken up bounty hunting in her spare time. She was already starting to earn a name for herself by capturing a few low-level dark wizards that were wanted by the French ministry. Remus had started to teach her more offensive spells and Riley was quickly becoming a competent fighter using just spells. Her mother's old charms book didn't hurt either. Her strength, speed and stamina continued to steadily increase. She was now twice as fast as an elite Jonin and she could multiply her strength 30 times. Giving her the strength of a Taijutsu master. She could currently crush concrete barriers with her fists with absolute ease. She was also getting closer and closer to the age where she could begin focusing on physical abilities like her strength. She had also started training with the wakizashi she had gotten from Shisui. Speaking of Shisui, one day, Remus had asked her what it was that Itachi had given her that had belonged to Shisui. Riley had pulled out the old scroll and released its contents which turned out to be a crow. Nothing seemed off with it at first until Remus noticed that it had a Mangekyou Sharingan in one of its eyes. She had told him that the eye belonged to Shisui and that Itachi had trusted her to keep an eye on it and keep it away from the elemental nations. The two kept in regular contact with Kakashi and Itachi, who kept them up to date on the goings-on in the village. Riley also received a lot of letters from Lily and Minato. She would mostly toss them aside only to read them later on. They were simple, asking how she was doing and wishing her well, never more in-depth or intrusive than that. Riley had also taken time to learn the abilities she had gotten from Kakashi and her father. As she suspected they were both men's signature techniques, the Rasengan and the Chidori. She suspected that both men, or at least Minato, had thought it would be a few years before Riley could make any headway with such techniques, but she was determined to learn them and add such powerful abilities to her growing list of powers. A part of her did wonder why Minato had given her the technique, given his past reactions to her abilities, and a part of her began to suspect that someone else had gotten involved. One day she decided to examine the handwriting of both scrolls containing information on the Chidori and the Rasengan, and while the handwriting was indeed different, a part of her couldn't help but notice that the instructions for both techniques followed a similar pattern and, more importantly, a similar inflection. Now, of course, Minato had been Kakashi's teacher and had taught him much of what he knew, so there was always the possibility that Riley was overthinking things, but a part of her couldn't shake the idea that it was Kakashi who had been the one to pass on the secrets of the Rasengan, and in that case, he may have also stolen Lily's old charms book. If Riley was right, it was probably his way of trying to mend the gap between her and her parents. She didn't know if she was right, and at this point, it didn't really matter. It was just something that stood out to her, a thought that caught her attention. She learned both abilities with gusto and quickly set about to master them. She had made some progress with the Chidori, but the Rasengan was still giving her issues. She now understood why her father hadn't completed the technique, the damn thing was temperamental with pretty much every element. During this time, Riley had also begun to undergo some more intimate changes. She noticed that she was growing taller and her chest was beginning to develop more. Asking Remus about it, the man sputtered something nonsensical and then got her a book. She read it and it explained that she was beginning to go through puberty. After memorizing everything the book had to say, she spent about an hour trying to hit Remus with it because he was too much of a wuss to just tell her this himself. 2 years passed. Riley was 10 years old now, her hair was now down to her lower back and still as deep blackish red as it could be. She was now 4.5 feet tall and she was blossoming into a beautiful young lady. She was developing quickly, much quicker than most girls her age. She looked to be closer to 12 or 13 than 10. Remus suspected that in terms of ability she was now at the same level as a Jonin. Just with more chakra and far less experience. Remus had told her that they would begin her animagus training after the next full moon and Riley couldn't be more excited. 2 years, 1 month passed. Riley had just taken the potion to see what her animagus form was. She was currently experiencing a rather trippy dream sequence and all she could make out of her form as it walked over what looked like giant anthills was that it had blackish red fur like her hair, its hand claws had opposable thumbs and she walked on all fours. It also had an elongated nose mouth like a dog. Also, she heard a boom with each one of her steps. She had no clue what that could possibly mean. She had told Remus and he seemed just as confused as she was. She asked Madara, who hummed curiously in reply. So, Riley set to work trying to figure out her form. 2 years, 3 months passed. She had done it, she knew what her form was and man did it scare the hell out of her. It was a fox, more specifically a giant fox. After reflecting on her dream, she realized that the anthills she was stepping over were just hills, like hills. Her form must have been like 300 feet tall, if her math was right. After talking it over with Remus and Madara, they both came to the conclusion that holding the nine-tailed spirit must have caused her body to adapt an animagus form based on it. Well, now that she knew, she could begin her training. 2 years, 6 months passed. Alright, you ready this time? I think you almost have it. Remus stated. Riley nodded as she slipped back into a deep concentration. After a moment she willed the magic in her body to change her, she felt her limbs shift and stretch. She felt fur grow on her skin and she felt herself grow larger. This was probably the 20th try today and she would be damned if she went another day without getting this down. Suddenly she heard Remus chuckle and clap. She opened her eyes to see that she had to look down at him. She glanced down at her body and realized that she had in fact done it. She had taken her animagus form. Right now, it wasn't at its full height but for all intents and purposes she had done it. She was now a 7-foot-tall fox that looked like a smaller, wilder version of the 9 tails. Also she noticed that she didn't have any tails. Not even a little nub back there. Mentally scowling and promising to fix it later, she went back to admiring herself. Great job, Riley. Amazingly well done. Remus congratulated her. All Riley could do in reply was give a very fox-like grin. Good job, kid. Now you can go back to Konoha and really scare the hell out of people. Madara commented, causing Riley to snicker at the thought. Now you just have to work on those tails. Madara commented, causing Riley to scowl a bit and get back to work. 3 years passed. It was amazing. She had just gotten her Hogwarts letter. She was so happy, it did kind of suck since her birthday was after the school year started, so she had to wait an extra year, but she would manage. She just filled her time with bounty hunting and training. She managed to make a minor name for herself capturing dark wizards and even putting down a few. It was good work and it kept a nice flow of income coming in. Almost 4 years passed August. It was 2 weeks till Hogwarts started, so Remus and her were packing up their stuff and heading to Britain. Riley was taking one last stroll around the city that had become home to her. Remus and her were still in France, actually they weren't all that far from Beauxbaton's all-witches school. Riley had thought of attending, but their school seemed a little too girly for her. Also, she was more than a little disgruntled at her current appearance. Last full moon her and Mooney went out for a run. She went in her animagus form, which Mooney responded better to, which still didn't have any tails, for reasons that confounded Riley, and while on that run, both of them had caught lice. Now cutting Remus's hair was fine, and he kept it short anyway, but Riley had to cut her hair short too, and for some reason the lice they had gotten were magical or something like that and wouldn't come out, so she now had her hair cut short and Remus still hadn't stopped joking that she was the prettiest boy in all the lands. He told her that with the chest wrappings she wore, along with her short hair, she could easily pass for a little boy. It mostly had to do with that fact that her voice was deeper for a girl and because of how tall she was that it made her appear slightly more masculine. Oh, the woes of teenage years. Hell, she had even received letters from Kakashi and Itachi poking fun at her hair. She swore she would get back at Remus the first chance she got. What really pissed Riley off though was that it took her hair forever to grow. Seriously, she probably only had a grand total of 3 haircuts in her life, counting this one. So now she was stuck wandering the city saying her goodbyes to it before leaving in the morning. As she walked, she heard a woman scream. Ever since taking her animagus form, her hearing and smell had become incredibly sensitive. She could seriously smell a fly fart from a mile away. And she could hear people shouting from over a block away in a busy street. She stopped and listened for the sound again, trying to pinpoint it. She focused her sense of hearing and tried to locate the scream. Riley had a thing about hurting women. She didn't let that kind of thing go unanswered. She heard it again, this time she was able to pinpoint it. She quickly headed in that direction. A moment passed by before she arrived at a back alley. There, she found 6 men who looked like they were about to rape 2 girls. Both girls were blondes, one looked to be 13, 14, while the other looked to be about 8 or so, definitely younger than Riley. No. Please let her go. Riley could hear the older girl shouting for the younger to be set free. One man had the little girl pinned to the ground and he was giving the older girl a cruel smile as he, almost delicately, ran his hand along the little girl's rear. The younger child was crying for her mother. Riley could tell she was beyond terrified. The youngest girl started screaming for her papa to wake up. Riley glanced over and spotted a man lying about 15 yards further down the alley. There was some blood coming out of the back of his head. He looked to have been struck from behind. "You play nice now." One of the men whispered into the older girl's ear, "You do and we may let her go." At hearing that, the older girl started to cry, but she stopped struggling. The man smirked as he slowly started to cut the older girl's shirt with his knife. The other 3 men were fiddling with their wands, grinning lecherously at the older girl. The girl tried to look brave, but she was having immense trouble. She didn't let her eyes leave the younger girl though, who was still crying. She watched the man on top of her reach down to caress her again, but this time he never made contact. The older girl watched as the man on top of her sister had his head taken off by what looked like a reducto. She watched as the alley was showered in blood, bones, and gray matter. Despite the nature of the gory death, a part of the young woman's heart leaped for joy at the sight of her assailant's death. The little girl felt the man fall off of her. She quickly shot up and turned to run, not noticing what had happened to him. When she did, she spotted her salvation. A young person was walking towards them with a furious look on their face. The young girl didn't have to think about it, she ran towards her savior. She ran into the person and clung to them. They couldn't be much older than she was. "Hey. What the hell?" one of the men shouted as they saw their headless buddy's corpse. All the men turned and spotted Riley walking towards them. The crying younger girl was clinging to her. "You little bitch," one man began to shout, but he never finished as a kunai lodged itself in his forehead before he even saw it coming. The other 4 men moved back behind the older girl, intent on using her as a human shield. "Not one step closer, or this little bitch gets it." The man who held the older girl shouted at Riley. The older girl watched in a mixture of fascination and terror as her young savior's eyes glowed red, and suddenly the man who held her released her and started screaming in agony for a few moments before collapsing. The older girl didn't waste any time, she ran towards her savior just as she heard the men behind her start to shout out spells. She saw her savior raise a single hand while her other held the young girl close. That hand then became a blur of motion, wood style. Blossoming cactus technique. Her savior stated, and the older girl saw something shoot out of the girl's leg and into the ground. Then she heard the men behind her scream in pain. She glanced back to see some sort of round wooden object sticking out of the ground, and jutting out of it were long pointy wooden spikes that pierced the men in multiple places. After a moment, the spikes retracted and the object sank into the ground. A moment passed before all of her remaining assailants collapsed to the ground, dead from their injuries. As they died, the magically conjured ropes that kept the girl's hands bound disappeared. "Fleur!" the younger girl shouted as she dove at her sister. Fleur pulled her sister into a tight hug as she let out a few pained sobs. She glanced up at her savior only to find them missing. She looked around and spotted them kneeling over her father, some sort of greenish glow coming from their hand. After a moment their savior finished what they were doing and stood to look over at them. "I've healed his wounds. He'll wake soon. You 3 should get out of here." I read one of their minds. "These men were sent to kill you 3. Riley stated in French. In reality she had just used Tsukiyomi on the man holding Fleur and tortured the info out of him. "Why?" Fleur asked. "Your father here." Riley responded pointing at the man. "He's the head of the law enforcement group here in France, right? He's been cracking down on these guys and they don't like it." Fleur stared at Riley for a moment before nodding. Thank you so much." Fleur finally stated as fresh tears fell from her eyes. Riley stared back for a moment before offering her a smile. "Hey, I'd never abandon a girl in need." Riley replied, the genuine nature of her smile causing a reaction within the older Vila's heart. Fleur stared at Riley for a moment, the smile on her face, something about it just filled Fleur with confidence and happiness. She felt a warmth spread through her chest at the sight of that kind angelic smile on her young savior's face. "Who are you?" the younger girl asked. "You can call me Riley." Riley replied. I am Fleur, this is Gabby, thank you for all your help. Fleur thanked her again. Anytime. You two stay safe, alright. Riley stated as she shunshined away, just as the girl's father began to stir. Who was that boy, Fleur? Gabby asked, believing that Riley was a boy. I don't know who he was, but I want to. Fleur replied as she stared at where Riley had been, still feeling the warmth and kindness that Riley's smile had given her. To be continued. Chapter 7. School is about to start. Riley and Remus both stopped to look around as they arrived at their destination. They had portkeyed to Britain, and Remus had Riley side apparate with him to the Leaky Cauldron. Remus, it's been forever. The man behind the bar stated as the two entered. It's good to see you again, Tom. Riley, this is Tom, he owns the Leaky Cauldron here. Remus introduced the two. Nice to meet you, lass. Is there anything I can get you, Remus? Tom asked. A room. If you've got one. We've got business at Gringotts, and this one has to get her supplies for Hogwarts. Remus replied. Off to Hogwarts are ya? I wish you the best of luck. Tom stated as he fished out a key and handed it to Remus. Thank you. Riley replied with a smile. Alright. Let's go deal with the goblins first, then we'll go shopping. Remus told her as they headed out to Diagon Alley. Riley was so excited. She took in the alley in all its splendor. It was jam-packed with people and activity. Riley wasn't a stranger to crowded cities or anything, but this was her first real entrance into the magical world. She'd been to a few magical places in France and Germany but not many. They made their way to Gringotts. Upon entering, Riley immediately took notice of the fact that out of all the Gringotts she'd ever been in, the goblins in this one looked the snottiest. Each one wore an unpleasant look on their face, and most stared at her with complete disinterest. Riley was smart enough to know what that meant. These goblins deal with shit on a daily basis. Hello. Remus greeted one of the tellers. What can I help you with? The goblin asked in a bored tone. I was wondering who we speak to about transferring over a vault and accessing an old one. Riley answered, stepping forward. Alright. Which vault would you like to access? The goblin asked. Slytherin. Riley replied. At hearing that, the goblin shot her a look. He almost sneered at her. Listen, girl, this isn't a place for your jokes. Lie again and you will leave with one less hand. The goblin growled at her. Remus shifted uncomfortably as Riley's face twitched, a spark of anger jolting through her at the threat. Having the snarling goblin glare at her set her on edge, and she was halfway to activating her Sharingan when she let out a long breath and tried to calm herself. Crotchety little devils, aren't they? Madara harumphed. Alright, let me try this a different way, since you seem to think I'm kidding. Riley stated with a murderous gleam in her eyes at being threatened and called a liar. She took a step back and glanced at the other tellers. I, Riley Narumi Slytherin Achua, demand access to my accounts. If Gringotts isn't willing to accommodate me, then I will take my funds elsewhere. Riley stated loudly, finishing by directing killing intent at the teller who had threatened her. The goblin leaned away from her in surprise as he felt the murderous power emanating off of her. It was in that moment that the goblin realized that this was no ordinary child. The goblins shared a few glances with one another, and the one she had been talking to previously swallowed audibly in response to her counter-threat. So, either assist me and do your fucking job. Or get me your manager so that he and I can discuss taking my money somewhere else. Riley threatened. After all, I made sure to tell the goblins in the Land of Fire to inform the goblins here of my status as head of Slytherin House through right of conquest. Riley added with a menacing grin. Hearing that, the teller nodded, as he did recall receiving that memo a while back. Apologies, Lady Slytherin. Can't be too careful, lot of human trash out here that would love to get their hands on Slytherin's vault. Let me just make sure you are who you claim to be and we'll get everything sorted. The goblin apologized and fished out a quill and paper. He acted quickly and professionally, trying hard not to do anything to further endanger their business with such a young and willful client. Thank you, was that so hard? Riley asked with a smile. Remus all the while let out a sigh of relief, happy that things didn't get out of control. Please sign your name. This quill will take a bit of your blood and let me know what vaults you have the right to. The goblin explained. After getting a nod of approval from Remus, she did just that. She felt a stinging in her hand as she wrote her name, but it quickly faded when she was finished. A few moments later, access to the Slytherin and Achua accounts came up. But good. Now what business would you like to handle? The goblin asked. Well, first I would like to have the Achua vault transferred here so that I may access it. Second, I would like access to the Slytherin vault to retrieve some funds. Riley replied. Very well, we'll begin the transfer as soon as the paperwork is finished. We'll have an owl deliver it for you. All you have to do is sign the documents and send them back. We can handle any withdrawal here, just tell me how much you want. The goblin told her. Do you have some sort of bag or card like muggles use so that I can access funds without making countless trips here? Riley asked. Yes, these bags cost 5 galleons, just think of the amount you want and it will magically draw from your account also, by placing a drop of your blood on the button here, you can ensure that only you can use it. The goblin told her. Great, I'll take it. I'll be back to inspect the Slytherin vault some other time. We're staying at the Leaky Cauldron for now, so you can send the paperwork for the Achiwa vault there. Riley thanked the goblin. Very well, will there be anything else? The goblin asked. Yes, what, if you don't mind my asking, is your name? Riley inquired. Beartrap. The goblin replied nervously. Well, Beartrap. I hope we can be friends. I take care of my friends. Riley stated with a smile as she dumped 50 galleons onto his desk. Beartrap grinned and nodded, happy to have ended this meeting on good footing with the young Slytherin lord. Riley and Remus quickly made their way back out into the alley. Well, let's go get what we need. Riley stated, earning a nod from Remus. And so they went. From shop to shop, they got what they needed. Riley was so excited to finally get to spend some time with children of her own age group. She had spent the last few weeks excited for the opportunity, though with such excitement also came with it some painful memories. The idea of spending time with kids her own age did appeal to her, but she couldn't forget that such kids used to bully her, and on top of that, just by thinking about making new friends, she would eventually start thinking about Shisui, and that always left her feeling sad. Shisui though, would want her to be happy and try to make friends, so that's what she intended on doing. The two most interesting stops for the day were the pet store and Ollivander's wand shop. At the pet shop, Riley bought a snowy owl that was quite beautiful, though according to the person behind the counter the bird was temperamental. She had Remus name it since she herself sucked at naming things. He decided on Hedwig. Afterwards they went to Ollivander's. Remus stayed outside since he was honestly creeped out by old Ollivander's ominous ways. The freaky old man was hiding behind the door and greeted her when she entered. Greetings, child. Come for a wand, have you? Ollivander asked. Yes, sir, I have. Riley replied. With a nod and a smile, Ollivander measured her up and started passing her wands to try. The wands she received did everything from nothing to exploding, to bursting into flames to literally collapsing in on themselves like dying stars. Riley found it amusing at first to watch how these tools of magic reacted to someone they weren't made for, though it quickly started to annoy her as she went through more and more and found nothing of use. Ah, tricky customer, eh? Ollivander stated with an amused smirk on his face and a mad gleam in his eyes. Would it just be easier to have one personally made? Riley asked after the 100th wand he handed her fired out of her hand into another dimension she suspected because it vanished before hitting the wall. Yes, I think I understand now, you have the skill for a wand, but the power for something more. I've got it. I'll make you a staff. Ollivander stated with the biggest happiest grin on his face. A staff? Riley inquired with a confused look. Magical staffs are rare and powerful tools of magic. Only about 1 in every 10,000 witches or wizards ever reaches the raw power needed to use one. Oh, how overjoyed I am to be able to make one. Ollivander explained before nearly squealing in joy. Oh, that sounds cool. How long will that take to make? Riley inquired with a happy grin. A day to make it, another to enchant it. As long as I have the right items for it. So let us start picking out cores. You will need 6 cores and a focus. To ensure that it works, special enchantments and runes are used to limit its power to only a fraction of each core within the staff. This way you can shrink it down and use it as a wand or expand it and use it as a staff. Ollivander explained as he led her to a room with a ton of various woods and magical cores for wands. Hold out your hand and pass it over all of the items. Pick 6 cores and 1 wood that feels right. Ollivander told her with an excited smile. Riley complied. She picked the wood first. When her hand passed over a darker block she paused. Something about this wood seemed right, so she picked it. She set it on a table next to Ollivander and moved on to the cores. She needed 6. She closed her eyes and just passed her hand over each one. Strangely, at certain times she would feel her heart flutter joyfully, and in some cases, she got butterflies in her stomach or she felt as if she wanted to blush. She picked the 6 that invoked these reactions. Alder wood. Good choice. Not many wand makers like to use it. But it tends to work well with cores that don't like to mingle, and it seems a lot of your cores don't, Ollivander said with a chuckle. Powdered fairy wings. Basilisk skin. Vela hair. And 3 feathers, 1 from a hippogriff, 1 from a phoenix, and 1 from an augury. Your staff will be a mighty one. Temperamental, but mighty. Ollivander finally stated with a mad gleam in his eyes. What does all that mean? Riley asked. Well, very long story short, as I think you have left poor Remus waiting long enough. All of those cores don't like to work well together. You have fairy wings which don't like the dark arts, you have basilisk skin, which likes them a lot. You have hippogriff feather and Vela hair which are temperamental to the point where I don't even make wands with Vela hair usually. I've had that in stock for quite some time. This will be an interesting project if I do say so myself. I look forward to seeing what this can do. Ollivander informed her merrily. So how much do I owe you for this? Riley asked after a moment. Normally for something like this with all of these cores and enchantments, it would be quite expensive however, to make a magical tool like this is an opportunity I so rarely get to indulge in so, I will drop the price to 100 galleons. Ollivander told her. Okay, here's half now, I'll get you the other half when it's done. Riley stated as she dumped 50 galleons onto Ollivander's desk. Before you go. You still need a focus. Ollivander told her. Oh what does that do? Riley inquired. The focus is needed in a staff. It's the focal point for which all of the magic passes through. So, it needs to be something magically powerful, but also something that has a connection to you as a person. Ollivander told her. I know something that fits that description. Madara commented. Riley nodded, knowing what he was referring to. But was she really willing to do that? She thought for a moment before asking 2 questions. Once it's in, can a focus ever be removed? Riley asked. No, the focus fuses to the staff, it becomes a part of it. Ollivander replied with a glint in his eye. One more question, would a human eye suffice? Riley asked again. It would have to be a powerful magical eye, but yes, eyes have been used in staffs in the past. Ollivander answered, the gleam in his eye growing. Riley gave it one last thought over before making her decision. If I do this then at the very least no one will ever be able to use Shisui's eye for their own gains. Plus, I'm sure he'd want to keep up the good fight with me, maybe see what kind of trouble we can get into. Riley thought. After a moment she decided and pulled out the scroll with Itachi's crow. It flew out of the scroll and landed on her shoulder. Will this kind of eye suffice? Riley asked. A Sharingan? No, a Manjikyu Sharingan, yes, I do believe that constitutes as powerful enough. Ollivander replied as he pulled out his own wand and stunned the bird and placed it on a table. I will have it made for you in 2 days. Ollivander told her. You take care of that eye, old man, you fuck this up and somehow I'll find some way to shove every wand in this building up your ass without you dying. Riley threatened. Your friend's eye is in good hands. Please be back in 2 days' time, your new staff will be finished by then, also would you like any runes carved into the staff? They cost 5 galleons apiece, but they can be very useful. Ollivander asked. Yeah, can you make so that only I can use it? Also, can you place a rune to make it unbreakable? Riley asked, earning a nod from Ollivander. She placed the 10 galleons on the table and walked out. She left a shadow clone to watch the building to make absolutely sure the old fart didn't try to make a break for it with Shisui's eye. She then told Remus what took her so long. He informed her that he wasn't surprised that she could use a staff and then her and Remus went back to the leaky cauldron. When they got there, they found that Gringotts had already sent over the paperwork and they also found an owl waiting to deliver a letter. It was brown in color and very majestic. Riley read the letter first. Surprisingly, it was in French. Dear Riley. I don't know if you remember me, but my name is Fleur Delacour. You rescued my sister and I from those awful men a couple of days ago. We never got a chance to properly thank you. So, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I can't thank you enough for what you did for my little sister and me. My father used some of his connections to track you down, he is very eager to thank you as well. I know that you must be getting ready to head back to school soon, so we won't be able to meet for a while, but if you are willing, my family and I would like to meet with you and offer our sincerest of thanks in person, if you are willing. Until such a time I also wanted to ask if you would mind if I wrote to you. I find myself wishing to get to know my savior who showed incredible bravery in dealing with those evil men. I do hope you're right. My little sister still hasn't stopped talking about how brave you are. Sincerely, Fleur. Riley finished reading and looked over at Remus who was smirking at her. What? Riley asked. Someone find themselves a little girlfriend. Remus joked. Hey, it's not like that. She just wanted to thank me for rescuing her and her sister. Riley shot back. You're blushing. Remus commented with a snicker. Riley's eyes went wide at that and she placed her hands on her cheeks. She really was blushing. She thought back to that incident and placed a face to the writer of the letter. The pretty blonde-haired Viola wanted to get to know her better. Maybe she would want to be Riley's friend. That idea alone was enough reason for her to quickly decide to write her back. Oh, shut up. Riley fired back at Remus as she set the letter off to the side and started writing her reply. What did she mean by back to school? Remus asked himself. Dearest Delacours. Thank you for writing me. I'm happy you are doing well now. Sadly, my schedule is busy up until school starts, so I won't be able to meet with you anytime soon. If the holidays or end of term rolls around and we find ourselves with free time, I would be happy to meet with you. And Fleur, please tell your sister that both you and she are free to write to me anytime. I'd love to hear from the both of you. Until I hear from you again. Riley. She quickly gave the letter to the owl and sent it back to the Delacours before proceeding with the paperwork from Gringotts. 2 days later. What do you think it will be like? Riley asked with a huge grin as her and Remus walked into Ollivander's. You'll just have to wait and see. Remus replied with a smile. Ah, young Riley, I see you have returned. Your staff is finished. Ollivander told her. The man had a look of absolute pride on his face as he lifted his staff up from behind the counter. The staff was 4.5 feet long and it seemed to fit her height perfectly. It was a brownish red in color. Starting at the bottom, the staff had a pointy and thinned out end, looking very much how you'd expect a large wand to look. It was smooth and straight up until just over a third of the way up the staff, where the wood began to twist and look as if two pieces of wood were twisted tightly together. It was slight and subtle at first, up until about half of the way to the top, there she could see a rounded out part that looked like a grip, after that it continued to twist until about a fourth of the way to the top, where it broke into two pieces of wood that twisted more widely. There was actually a small amount of space in between the pieces. They continued up until they ran into the body of a crow. This one was smaller than the one she had left him. The bird had its wings tucked up beside itself, and its head was pointing up almost like it was cawing at the sky, and in its beak set almost like a gem, was Shisui Sharingan. The eye spun around and looked at everything in the room, stopping only momentarily to glance at the two of them, before continuing to whirl around looking at different things. Wow, that is quite an imposing instrument of magic. Remus commented. Indeed, this staff holds much power. I placed a sizing charm on it, so it will grow with you. Ollivander stated as Riley approached, and he handed the staff to her. The second she touched it, Shisui's eye locked with hers, she could clearly see recognition in it. She also felt her magic slip into the staff with ease, the thing just felt right. She could tell that something had been done to Shisui's eye, as it seemed to now be a glass eye, yet she could still feel Shisui's chakra within it. Alright, there are 2 runes on the grip here, one at the top, which serves to increase its size to staff size, and one in the bottom which serves to shrink it, allowing you to use it like a wand. Remember that when you switch between the 2 forms the location of the runes reverses with your grip, try it. Ollivander told her. Riley nodded and activated the rune on top, the staff quickly shrunk and she spun it around in her hand. The only change in its appearance was that the grip stayed large enough for her hand to wrap around, but it was now flush with the crow's body, without space in between. The crow's body was tiny now, and so was Shisui's eye, which was about the size of a marble in this state. I love it. This is awesome. Riley cheered. Well, give it a wave. Those cores were not easy to get to work right with each other. I found them all acting very competitive for some reason, almost like they wanted front place in your staff. It was odd. Ollivander commented. Riley waved the wand, and to her surprise a ton of sparks came flying out the end of it. Riley could only smile at the sight of that. Very good. Very good. Now, as I said, the wand form only uses a fraction of the power of all 6 cores, as to allow it to be used for more delicate things. When it's in staff form, it will use them all, at full power. Try your best to treat her well, she has quite the temper. Ollivander stated with a proud smile. Thank you, Mr. Ollivander. Here is the rest of your money. Riley paid the man and her and Remus departed. They had one more stop today, and that was at the ministry to meet with the minister himself. They had received a letter of summons from the ministry yesterday. Remus wasn't surprised, having the Slytherin vault reopened and the Uchiwa moving into the country. Remus suspected the minister wanted to make a grand first impression on the person who would hold very high standing in the country off her name alone. And if Riley garnered favors and used her standing to her advantage, she would be an even more valuable ally. The two arrived at the ministry. They were met by 2 aurors who escorted them to the minister's office. Riley could tell Remus was uncomfortable. Being a werewolf and all, people tended to react violently when they knew the truth, especially in Britain. They made it to Fudge's office, and Riley couldn't help but snicker at the huge damn picture of himself he had in it. That told her all she needed to know about the man. He had an inflated ego and was full of himself. The man was an older gentleman who had a slightly pudgy figure. He wore a dark striped suit and a bowler hat. Next to him was a woman dressed in all pink who looked like a toad. She had a face that looked like she was sucking on a mouthful of lemons. Riley knew she would hate both of these people immediately, so she adopted a formal expression and schooled her emotions before approaching the two. Fudge looked between the two before his eyes settled on Remus, Lord Slytherin. Remus simply smiled and shook his head in the negative. He nodded to Riley, who stepped forward. Greetings, Minister. My name is Riley Uchiwa Slytherin, head of the most ancient and most noble houses of Uchiwa and Slytherin. Riley greeted the two. Both looked a little surprised, obviously neither had expected the lord of two powerful houses to be a 13-year-old boy. "It's nice to meet you, lad," Fudge said with a smile as he stuck out a hand. "I'm a girl," Riley muttered with a disgruntled glare as Remus started to snicker beside her. Fudge immediately winced at his screw-up and Umbridge cringed for some reason. "My apologies. The file from Gringotts only has you listed by your titles." And with the short hair and all, Fudge tried to explain. "No worries, Minister, I've been told enough times that I resemble a young man with my haircut like this," Riley informed him as she shot Remus a glare. He simply smirked and looked away, feigning innocence. After a moment she shook his hand. "Well, now that is out of the way, I'd like to introduce my Under-Secretary Dolores Umbridge," Fudge stated, pointing towards the pink-dressed woman. "This is my Uncle Remus. He and I have been traveling for quite some time and are eager to rest now that all of my Hogwarts shopping is done. I'll be starting my first year soon, and as you may remember from your days as a first year, the time leading up to it can be quite exciting and draining," Riley stated in a formal manner. "Your first year? You're 11, my goodness, I would never have guessed. Well, I wish you the best of luck in your first year, always exciting to be off to Hogwarts," Fudge replied. Again Umbridge looked a little worried, Riley couldn't figure out why though. "So why are we here, if you don't mind me asking?" Riley inquired as she and the minister had a seat. "Well, when a house such as Slytherin is reactivated after long dormancy, the ministry likes to meet with the new head of house and assist them in acclimating to their station," Fudge informed her. "There is also the matter of your bloodline," Dolores piped in. Yes, I recall that bloodline holders in the elemental nations held a certain station. Well, there aren't many bloodlines here, they still hold a prominent position just off that accolade alone," Fudge explained. "The Sharingan is a powerful weapon. It doesn't surprise me that they want to spread it around in their country. Legends of what people have done with these eyes have spread far and wide, it seems." Madara hummed thoughtfully, Riley silently agreeing with his assessment. "Ah, I see where this is going. Britain doesn't have many bloodlines, and with one like mine entering the fray, you're eager to see it spread," Riley stated with a knowing smirk. Remus adopted a look of anger at the thought, while Fudge looked rather uncomfortable with the whole prospect. "My guess is that you were planning on asking me to take multiple wives so that I can repopulate my clan here in Britain. That would explain the reason why Madame Umbridge didn't take the news of my sex or age too well. I'm guessing you and the rest of the Wizengamot assumed I was older and a boy so you could sell your daughters off to me to gain access to my bloodline." Riley guessed. Both Fudge and Umbridge looked uncomfortable with being so easily read, especially by a child, though Umbridge schooled herself faster and responded. "You must understand, Lady Slytherin, that a bloodline like yours is powerful and many wish to see such things spread to these shores. We had no intention of forcing anything, simply making the offer available to you if you wished it," Umbridge told her. "She's good," Madara commented with a chuckle. "Well, lucky for you all then, that I've always wanted to have a large family, so here is how this is going to go. Sign me up for this, whatever you call it here, but know that all of my partners will be chosen by me. I don't quite know where my interests lay, but I do know, as do you, that there are plenty of spells, rituals and other means to allow one woman to impregnate another. If I take multiple husbands then fine, if I take multiple wives then fine. I get the final say in the matter. I will have at least 3 partners within 10 years' time, as I am only 11 and it will take me a little while before I'm even interested in that sort of thing. I will split my partners between my 2 current houses so that there will be someone to take my place if something happens. Is this reasonable, Minister?" Riley asked, sounding very formal and professional. "Yes, I do believe that is both fair and reasonable. The Wizengamot would also like to offer you a seat once you turn 16 for Slytherin House. Down the line hopefully we can integrate the Achua as well," Fudge replied. Umbridge looked affronted that Riley mentioned the possibility of taking wives, but then she remembered that it was more important to have Riley's bloodline in the country rather than following all social protocol. If Riley wanted to sleep with women, then fine, it just meant more of her bloodline being passed down. "I accept the seat. When I turn 16, if I want it then, I will take it myself, if not, I will assign a proxy till such a time when I feel ready to take my seat. For now, since I don't know anyone here, I will allow Slytherin's seat to remain empty until such a time as I turn 16 or find a suitable proxy," Riley answered. "Yes, good. Alright, one more thing, there was no record on your parentage." "We wanted to inquire as to whom they were?" Fudge asked. "No, you wanted to know if I was a pureblood or not," Riley replied with another knowing smirk. Remus had filled her in on the state of magical Britain and how it reacted depending on the nature of one's birth. "Well, by your standards I'd be a half-blood. I was born to a witch and a shinobi. Though both of my pedigrees from them are flawless. My father is the son of Madara Achua, his mother was in Uzumaki, so he was a pureblood. My mother on the other hand was a muggle born here, though in reality that is untrue, turns out she is the head of Ravenclaw family and she never knew, so actually she's a half-blood, probably descended from a long line of squibs. I do believe by your standards that I would be pureblood because I come from a pureblood and a half-blood, but since the shinobi was a pureblood I wouldn't know. Riley explained. Your mother is the head of the Ravenclaw house? Fudge asked with a surprised look. Yep, no clue what she'll do with it or whether I'll be receiving it when she dies or if it's going to my little sister. My mother is Lily Namikaze Evans. My father is Minato Namikaze. Riley told them. Both Fudge and Dolores's jaws slammed into the ground at that revelation. Remus couldn't help but giggle as Minato was world famous in the magical community. You can confirm all of that with Gringotts, but I still don't know, what does having that kind of pedigree make me? Riley asked curiously. You are most definitely a pureblood. Fudge managed to reply. Oh cool. Alright, one last thing before I go, Minister. I am an animagus. I was wondering where I can register so I don't get arrested for practicing. Also, as head of my house I'm exempt from underage magical restrictions, right? Riley inquired. The two looked shocked that such a young girl was an animagus. Many people never became one and those who did were often much older. Well, to the second, yes you are, feel free to practice your magic wherever you wish, the trace on your wand should be deactivated if it hasn't already. To the first, well, I can have my secretary here escort you to the animagus registration office. Fudge replied. He quickly pulled out a piece of paper, wrote something down and handed it to Umbridge, whom smiled and nodded. That should speed along the process. You should have your license by the time you leave for Hogwarts. Fudge told her. Alright, well, if there is nothing else, Minister, I should be off to those offices, best get this out of the way soon. Thank you for meeting with me and getting so many troubling things squared away. I hope we meet again real soon. Riley stated as she stood and shook the minister's hand. Yes, right. I hope that as well, Lady Achua Slytherin. Until then, have a great day and good luck with your animagus test. Fudge responded, believing this to be a successful meeting. This way. I'll show you two to the animagus registration office. Dolores stated as she led them away. If you don't mind my asking, my lady, what is your animagus form? Umbridge inquired as she led them to their destination. A fox. Was Riley's simple reply. Ah, how wonderful, well, here we are. Good luck and please give this to the man inside. Umbridge stated, handing the paper to Riley. Riley and Remus watched her depart before turning and heading into the registration office, eager to get this out of the way. Meanwhile in France. Fleur, a letter has come for you. Apolline Delacour called to her eldest. Fleur wandered into the room to find her mother waiting with letter in hand. Fleur took it and began reading. After a few moments she smiled brightly. Is this about that pretty boy who saved you? Apolline asked with a smile. He says that he wishes to meet during the holidays or after school has ended and he wants Gabby and I to write him. Fleur replied with a bright smile. Well, you'd best run off and tell her. She has been dying to get into contact with her savior and I'm sure your father would like to write him too. Apolline told her daughter. Fleur quickly nodded and skipped off happily to find Gabby and tell her the good news. Apolline could only smile. Fleur hadn't been this happy to talk to anyone since she came into her Vila powers. She wondered for a moment if she shouldn't write her own letter to thank this pretty young man who had saved her daughters and husband and who now seemed to have drawn the attention of her oldest child. Apolline hummed to herself for a moment before wandering off to find her husband and tell him the news. To be continued. What if Naruto has god level power in Harry Potter? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.